Thanks, everybody. I call to order the meeting of the Santa Barbara Unified School Board today on February 11th, 2020. This is our open session, and welcome. And with that, we will say the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Matsuoka.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Muy buenas tardes. Tenemos interpretación al español por si alguien gusta escuchar la presentación en español. Tenemos audífonos. Good evening. In order to provide language access, we have Spanish interpretation available. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we will move to, to public comment.
Nope.
What, am I still out of order here?
No action in closed session.
That's right. There was no action in item C4. There was no action in closed session taken. So then I moved to item C5, which is the superintendent's report. Mr. Matsuoka.
So in my report, I just would like to really share a moment of happiness, but also moments of sadness. Dos Pueblos High School has been going through a lot in the last 8 days. A week ago Monday, Mr. Woodard and I went to the ER room at Cottage Hospital, where we just had some brief moments with the Katz family. It's probably a parent's worst nightmare to say goodbye to your son. And there will be a time of celebration that the high school is going to host for the family. I think it's Sunday this week. But what a tragedy, and the family's holding up. The track and field team has been a family ever since then. So that was Trevor Katz, who passed away a week ago Monday. And then, what was it, just yesterday? That Adolfo and Mary Jane Corral, parents at DP, were both killed by some kind of hit and run crash on Cathedral Oaks. And so, just thanks to Bill Woodard and his team for holding that school of 2,000 kids in their hearts and their arms. Adolfo was the Equity, Diversity, and Cultural Competency Coordinator at Santa Barbara City College, and Mary Jane was a computer specialist at La Patera Elementary. And so they have multiple kids, three children. I think one's graduated, 4 children, graduate, Dos Pueblos High senior student, Goleta Valley Junior, and La Patera Elementary. So we have a lot of care to provide for this family. So just a moment of silence, please, on behalf of these families. Thank you for honoring them. And then yesterday we had a moment of celebration. Myself and Principal Casey Kilgore from Franklin Elementary went to the California Distinguished School Celebration along with probably 200 other schools. We had our picture taken with State Superintendent Public Instruction Tony Thurman, and it was really wonderful to hang out with people who've been part of Franklin. Some cases 6 years, but in some cases like 45 years. These are people who've given their entire careers to the school. And it shows in the kids, it shows in their culture, it shows in the work of that school. So it was really an honor to be there, get a picture taken, and celebrate with them. So thank you to Franklin and all you do for our kids, and we will continue to celebrate their good work. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Matsuoka. Now moving on, any board comments or correspondence from my colleagues that they'd like to share? All right, Ms. Ford.
Thanks so much. Last week I did attend the Santa Barbara County Executive Board Committee, and we had another great program. This time the program was presented by an educational law firm that's throughout the state of California on the new AB 419, which extends Assembly Bill 420, which disallows suspension for willful defiance in grades K through 8 through 2025. And it was super interesting. I have a great PowerPoint that I want to share with board members and with the cabinet so we can all be on the same page on some very specific particulars about the law, but also just the fact that the state is really encouraging the use of restorative practices and trauma-informed education, SEL, and all kinds of positive behavior interventions. And just made me think how proud I was of how many of our administrators and teachers are working hard, and special props to Fran Wagonet to start putting these into place that will really change the face of student behavior in the state. I also just wanted to remind everyone and celebrate that today is International Day of Women and Girls in Science. And as we all know, this is unfortunately still a time when there is a great disparity between opportunities and biases exist in science. In particular, I noticed that there was a fascinating data point with Nobel Prizes in physics, chemistry, and medicine. 587 have gone to men and 20 have gone to women. So the UN Secretary General said today, to rise to the challenges of the 21st century, we need to harness our full potential. So on this day, let's pledge to end the gender imbalance in science. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Any other correspondence or comments from the board? Dr. Reed.
All right. Here we go. So before we get to public comment, I had the opportunity to attend the Equity Symposium and Advocacy Institute. The National School Board Association expects board trustees across the nation to become involved and make sure that we are current as a board in understanding nationwide issues and state issues relational to district practices and concerns, because it is important to have an understanding of what districts are facing across the nation and across the state, as it informs our educational practices and also our policies to ultimately ensure our students are getting what they need academically and to be career ready. So I attended this Equity Symposium and Advocacy Institute, and at the Equity Symposium, school board trustees came together to share their district's equity design and implementation. And additionally, during the Advocacy Institute, nationally, we came together in regards to looking at special education, funding, mental health, broadband access, deferred action for childhood arrivals, or DACA, and securing rural schools programs. So what I would like to do is just kind of speak a little bit to some of the brief takeaways around the two institutes, the Equity Symposium. First, there was a huge discussion around social, emotional, and skill development and academic readiness for Latinx youth. That was a big push within the Institute and something our district is actually working towards. Decades of research show, and this is research that they were providing to us, that core academic skills are necessary, but not only the skills that students need to succeed in the workplace and in school. So, in fact, there is an increasing consensus about the interconnectedness of social, emotional, and cognitive development in the learning process, or what we call SEL. And the point was recently emphasized at the National Commission on Social, Emotional, and Academic Development. And it echoes similar assertions articulated by ACT's holistic framework. I want to speak about ACT a moment. It was something that I didn't really understand, that actually for the past 15 years, ACT, which are the tests that students take to assess high school students, their academic success in going into college, has been spending 15 years on really looking at SEL and how does it serve students. And that research, they recently piloted in Texas, in the Region 1 area that serves over 430,000 K-12 students in middle schools, that this intensive assessment curricula and was together provided a dramatic difference of academic growth in 98% of the Latinx students and 84% in the low-income students and 37% in the ELL students, the English language learners. So what's exciting about this is that students that were way under average far exceeded and went over average with this intensive curricula piece and this work around SEL. And so what I learned was there's an opportunity for our district to potentially pilot a program like this. This is something we'd have to look into, but how can we make sure that we are providing the most up-to-date curricula that is interconnected with SEL that could potentially raise the student achievement in our schools? So I thought that was an exciting thing, and I'll be sharing that with the district in terms of grant opportunities. Other topics at the symposium were around culturally responsive policymaking and mental health, which is a huge, huge priority of nationwide across districts across the country. The Advocacy Institute was really exciting because I had an opportunity to participate and meet with legislative assistants in U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein's office, our Congressman Salud Carbajal, U.S. Senator Kamala Harris, and the Minority Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. And in these meetings, I came to those meetings and sat at the table to provide information about our district relational to all of those issues. So I'd like to just highlight, and really I want to thank Dr. Wagenet, Dr. Becchio, Mr. Rickman, and Sean Carey for providing me with additional information so that I could speak to our district's concerns. Specifically, in the area of mental health, I spoke to the fact that we had created a safety framework and a mental health framework. And it actually was really cool because at the table, the legislative assistant in Kamala Harris's office told everyone to wait, this is something we need to follow up on. So she is really excited about the fact that she felt the two frameworks were like a cutting edge frameworks that districts should be utilizing. And she wants to seek more information from us and from me to find out how they might support federally the work that we're doing. So that was exciting. Within special education, I'm going to not go on and on, but the key aspect is we need to push for special education funds to raise. When special education was brought forward, funds were at 40%. And now we, as a district, only receive 7% from the federal government in funding for special ed. That challenges our general education budget. So it's impacting all of our students because we don't have the funding that we should get. So across the nation, we are pushing for the raising of funds, and I think we heard today that that looks like a positive thing that's going to happen. We did raise the income last year in terms of special ed, but the push is it's a continued fight that we continue to have. But I guess what I would like to end on is that one of the pushes also was across the nation, everybody is impacted by the teacher shortage. So not only are we in our own community impacted, but we also impacted across the nation. And so a lot of discussion was around how can we create ways to ensure that our local communities are able to move forward and provide opportunities for new teachers in our district. So it provided an opportunity for us to discuss a pathway that we're working on with the Santa Barbara Unified School District, City College, and currently with Antioch and other universities to provide a seamless, cost-effective pathway for students who are engaged in wanting to become teachers in high school and then can move forward through City College and into the BA program and into a teacher credential program at a very cost-effective rate, and then with a promise of getting a job in the school district. Keep locals local. And that pathway I shared with the Senator Kamala Harris as well, and they are interested in seeing how they might participate with that as well in terms of the federal way of looking at this pathway, because they hadn't heard anything about that. So anyway, it was an exciting opportunity, but it was really important to get our information about what we're doing, but also to hear how we are relative to the nation and to the state. And so to provide that perspective is really important and for us to have, to understand that we're not just this little small community suffering in our own little ways or excelling, but we really need to see how we are globally in terms of other districts in our nation. So it was a very productive and it was a very informative meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes board comment and correspondence. Let's move on to public comment, item 7. That's part of the meeting.
So as part of public comment, we provide 3 minutes to each speaker. I'm going to call up 3 people at a time. And the first person is Aaron Bonsky, then we have John Morris, and then we have Jenny Schwartzel. Schatzel.
Good evening. My name is Erin Bonsky. I am a parent in Goleta Union School District and also a music specialist. And I am commenting on item G2, which is at the end of the agenda.
Oh,
So that's why I was wondering why I was called up.
actually, you were lucky to be called, but we really should have you. But if it's all right with the president, well, we've got you up there. All right,
Okay.
so you
I was
lucked out.
wondering, I was like, Okay, so I'm actually presenting a question about it. So I attended one of the parent information sections, and so I know that we're switching tracks, so I'll just briefly inform. G2, I believe, is in regards to the new health education curriculum that is being adopted in this next month by the school board. And so I attended one of the parent information sections forums that was conducted, and I am a little bit curious. Actually, I'm very curious as to how the information was given to parents. So I am the parent of a Goleta Union child who will be going into a Santa Barbara Union School District school next year. She'll be attending GV. But as a Goleta Union parent, I did not receive any Parent Square notification that any of this curriculum consideration was happening, nor did I receive, the only way I heard about it was secondarily through a friend of mine who currently has a student attending GV. And so I was wondering if and how it is unrolled. How is it noted in Ed Code that a new curriculum, what is the procedure for unrolling a new curriculum if part of that procedure involves notifying parents, not just of the current school district, but of all the children who will be affected by the curriculum? So that's my question. I know it was kind of
Right.
long.
We can't speak to your question. We can just
Well,
hit public
yeah,
comment.
I'm sorry that we're a little out of order here.
Oh,
But,
I see. So you have to
yeah.
speak to it when you get to G2?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Because these are for non-agenda items. So I apologize
it.
that you were
No, no
called up.
worries.
And I
Yeah.
imagine you're going to stay until that item.
Yes.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. So just to make sure those in public comment here, these are for non-agenda items. Excellent.
Good evening. My name is John Morris. I'm a member of Fair Education Santa Barbara. I'm here to talk about the bilingual education program. Let me say up front that I think it's great for kids to grow up with 2 languages. And just to put that in perspective, my wife is Canadian Swiss. Our children have been raised bilingual, speaking French since they were babies. And my children did not learn to read or write French until they went to school. My 6th grader went to school in Switzerland, did not know any reading or writing in French. He had to learn that in Switzerland. He also learned German at the same time. So I think I know a little bit about bilingual education. But my point is that I believe that if we're going to teach kids bilingual education, we should teach them English, because that's what they're going to need. I've been all over Europe. I get along fine in English everywhere I went. To my knowledge, the only place you get along in Spanish in Europe is in Spain. Same thing in Asia. I've been to Malaysia, I've been to Singapore, I did fine with English. I don't believe I would have gotten along in Spanish. I believe we were going to prepare these kids for the world where they can be in a multicultural society. They really need to be prepared in English. If you teach them to read in English, especially with phonics, the kids will pick up Spanish very quickly. I mean, there are only a couple of differences phonetically, like the LL and the J. But please, teach them in English. That's what they need to succeed. I think it's very important that we give these kids tools they need to succeed and not give them an excuse to fail. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jenny Schatzel, and I live in the district. I'm also a local business owner, and I have twin girls that will soon be, in a couple years, attending elementary school also. So I'm actually here to talk about, I'm part of Moms Demand Action, and we are a bipartisan, I just want to put it in layman's terms, we are here not to take anybody's guns away. We are here to advocate on common sense gun laws. And on June 18th of 2019, the biggest school board district in the U.S., which is the Los Angeles district, unanimously voted to unanimously approved the safe gun storage measure. And so what I'm asking is if we are willing to talk about that, what the board's view is on that. And one thing that came across as the board vice president of the Los Angeles school district said, safety of our students is one of our top priorities, and awareness of gun storage can save kids' lives. Even if Congress refuses to legislate on common sense gun laws, Los Angeles Unified will do what we exist to do, which is educate our families. So my ask is, what are we doing for the safety of our Santa Barbara students? Will we as a board approve a safe gun measure? And are we willing to talk about this? Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have Katie Allen and Leslie Sanderson.
Hi there. My name is Katie Allen, and I live in Santa Barbara Unified District. I am the mom of an almost 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. Because my children's safety is the most important thing to me, I am a member of the Santa Barbara chapter of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. With over 6 million supporters, Moms Demand Action is a national, nonpartisan advocacy group fighting for public safety measures that can protect people from gun violence and keep our families safe. We are part of the nation's largest gun violence prevention organization, Everytown for Gun Safety. Moms Demand Action works with survivors, mayors and city councils, law enforcement officers, faith leaders, educators, gun owners, doctors, and communities across the country who know there's more that we can do to prevent gun violence. We do this work because every day, 100 Americans die from gun violence and hundreds more are wounded. Gun violence is the second leading cause of death for American children and teens. The daily toll of gun violence in America doesn't always make headlines, but this violence affects everyone everywhere. We certainly have had our share of gun violence here in Santa Barbara. We support responsible gun ownership while doing much more to keep guns out of the wrong hands. This is why we advocate for a better background check system, including closing loopholes in the existing system. We support the red flag laws like California's gun violence restraining order and promoting responsible access to firearms through education and awareness and about safe storage. The reason that everyone here is tonight, everyone is here tonight, is because of the kids in our community. We all want to do right by them. But the fact of the matter is that we are not doing everything we can to ensure their safety. As Jenny mentioned, we should be following the lead of the Board of Education in Los Angeles Unified School District. They have required parents to sign a letter each year acknowledging their understanding of proper gun storage and their legal obligation to safely secure any firearms in their home. They understand that nearly 70% of student shooters gained access to a lawfully purchased gun from their residence or the residence of a relative. 87% of kids know where their parents' guns are kept, and 60% of kids have handled those guns. They also understand that over 80% of teens who commit suicide with a gun used one that belonged to someone in their home. Moms Demand Action Santa Barbara is working with numerous community partners to keep our kids and families safe.
30
We
seconds.
Hope to work with Santa Barbara Unified on prevention as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, Leslie Sanderson, mother of student at San Marcos High School receiving special education services. And I know last board meeting you guys talked about the budget deficit and the use of previously earmarked special education funds considered as savings in order to help balance the new budget. I understand that it's been explained that these were extra unfilled positions because they try to overstaff special education as people leave and they couldn't fill those positions. I would, however, disagree with this assumption for several reasons. You've hired a temp agency, Maxim, to fill para-educator positions, and I would consider all of those positions that are temporary positions actually permanent Santa Barbara Unified positions that are currently filled by mostly untrained temps. If you wanted to fill these positions, one could do so by hiring, as has been previously suggested, one of the multiple non-public agency behavior support agencies to fill these para-educator positions. I and other parents have sent qualified para-educators from other districts to apply, and they were either not granted an interview or told they could not match their current salaries. I've been told by administration in the past that we cannot compete with other districts such as Montecito or Hope as far as salaries. And number 4, recruiting of these needed positions has been lacking. And number 5, substitutes for absent para-educators and special education teachers are lacking. I know some have been happy with the Maxim paras, but in my experience, I have not been impressed. They've been unreliable, poorly trained, and quit after several days. Last year was very difficult for my son, as the para-educators called in sick frequently, and they were chronically understaffed. For my son, when there's a lack of para-education staff, he is unable to attend his general ed classes. He missed many of his gen ed classes last year due to the lack of staff. I was contemplating making a state complaint due to non-compliance for his one-to-one support in his IEP. But this year, there was improvement in staffing of his special education class, as there is the same amount of para-educator staff with half the amount of students as last year. Still, we have not had subs for many of the days that para-educators have been absent. If a non-special ed student's family was told, sorry, your child will not have class due to lack of staff, that would not be considered acceptable. Why is it acceptable for special education students? If those same parents were told we're going to balance the budget on the savings we have from not providing staff to
30
educate your
seconds.
student, I can assure you that there would be outrage. I'm just thinking you don't want to be balancing the budget on the backs of special education students. We're already have really poor scores for all students with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more public comment. Moni DeWitt.
Hi there, board. Thanks again for giving me an opportunity to speak. I would like to echo the same sentiments about special ed. I know how important poverty is to you and equity, because we walk through a door that says every child, every chance, every day. But it's not really happening for those children with learning differences, as well as the Latinx in poverty. And I can say what happens in this community because a lot of people with some means will take their children to private schools. Sometimes they'll get settlements that are secret with the district, and so some monies go there. But the monies never really wind up with the poor children or children in poverty, and we're not offering any one-on-one. Sorry if I'm out of breath, but I was late at home, so I had to rush over here. So the reason why one-on-one is really big, my son needed one-on-one, and he was blessed to get to go to a private school that gave us a partial scholarship. And I want every kid, Latinx, poverty, to get that same chance if they need it. And if we got rid of Lucy Calkins, which doesn't work for kids with learning differences who struggle with English, and we put in a phonemic program, we would raise the bar early on and do early assessment. So we can really do this if we have the will. And the law says we need to do this. And the money thing, yeah, don't cut special ed. That's just tacky, 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 tacky in a town this affluent, you know? I'm sorry, but it is, you know? Thank you, yeah, tacky.
Okay,
So let's
sorry,
thank
go
you,
ahead.
that was a good one, actually. Let's not be tacky, let's be thoughtful, okay? And let's put these people first, and let's get some one-on-one and lose Lucy Calkins. Wow, I still have so much more time left. Do I have any questions? But equity is super important, and we say that's what we're about. We say that when we walk through the door, but equity is not happening. In fact, I'll tell you a personal story. I'm supposed to be helping Luciano. Remember him? He came crying because his child was at Washington. It took him 2 years to get an IEP, and long story short, things didn't go well. Tried to get the same student into private school, but you know, there were attitudes after you fail in school. So that didn't work either. Anyway, they're in limbo. They thought they didn't sign an IEP, but now they're told they did, and their kid isn't getting what they need. So I want you all to give the special ed kids a big
30
old break.
seconds.
Yeah, I see, 29. So give them a break, be proactive. Let's support them like you support the food bank. That is so cool. Now just expand. I know you're innovative, and do this for special ed, and don't be geeks, okay? Thanks.
Thank you. That concludes public comment.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody. Okay, moving on to the next item, which is the acceptance of donations. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Now we move to item E, the consent agenda. Do any board members want to poll any of the consent items for clarification or questions? Anybody? Okay, well, let's have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving right along here to our action agenda. Item 1, F1. Dr. Reed.
Yes. In the case of 2019-20-30, I move to make the motion for full expulsion for 2 semesters which end June 2020.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. In the case of 2019-20-31, I move to make the motion for a stipulated agreement for full expulsion for 2 semesters which end in June 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item.
In the case of 2018-19-30, I move to make a motion for student re-entry from full expulsion for 2 semesters ending in January 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next item, item F4. Ms. Sims-Moten.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Rickman, can you bring up the resolution? I am proud to sponsor this resolution with regards to honoring Black History Month. And I will keep it short in that I would hope as we move forward that we don't relegate the history of some Americans to a month, sometimes a week, and sometimes a day, that we actually integrate it all year long and celebrate, honor the struggles that have come, celebrate the things that are going on. So we have inventors, we have doctors, we have scientists who are really a part of Black history, who are part of other ethnic groups that we need to celebrate that. So when we're in our English class, what literacy are we adding to the books? What diverse are we adding to our books with regards to that? When we're talking about science and biology, what scientists are there, you know, in terms of Dr. George Washington Carver, what creates things in terms of those scientists, so that our children can see the whole vast of what all America has contributed to this great country that we continue to celebrate. But it's important to incorporate it in every piece of our curriculum in our day. And what's the most opportunity to do that is in the education of the classroom, so that we can expand and inspire the minds of our students to be able to look at this world and see that everybody has made great contributions to this country. And so I'm hoping continue to look at that in terms of, you know, beyond the year, beyond the week. So it's not just in February we look at Black History Month and contributions that were made by Black Americans. We're not looking just in May and Cinco de Mayo, but we're looking all year long and celebrating the contributions of everyone that has made this country great. So I say that with honor and pride to support this resolution, and I move to approve it.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent, thank you, Ms. Moten. Okay, now we are moving to, that's good, let's do an applause for that. Let's move to item F5, Mr. Vizolini. Approval of agreement for architectural services with Kruger Benson Zymer Architects for the Adams Elementary School portable replacement project. We always love to hear about portable replacements, or at least I do.
Good evening, Board. Superintendent Matsuoka. We haven't talked about Adams School portable replacements for a while, so I wanted to catch you up on what's happening. As you'll recall, you may recall, our original plan was to try and replace the entire old library complex, and then also replace the 3 kindergarten classrooms down on the lower field. Our intention, let me show you a picture of our layout. This is what it was intended to be. The old library complex is here, and the 3 kindergarten classrooms on the upper left. So we had originally intended to try and use grant funding from the full day kindergarten program. As you recall, that's a state program that offered a 50-50 match for construction funding. Some of the requirements were we had to prove a financial hardship, which is a little difficult to do when you have bond money. We also had to have a high percentage of participation in the free and reduced lunch program. Unfortunately, they thought of the entire district instead of just one school, so our percentage was dropped because our high school participation isn't high in some of the other schools. So we did go ahead and apply for 2 different funding rounds in January and in May of 2019. Unfortunately, we got notification back from OPSC that we are not going to be receiving that funding. So we had to think about getting back within our budget. So we have a revised plan. So we are still going to replace the library. That is a net gain of 3 classrooms as it currently sits, because that building, they only use 1 classroom right now, so it'll be 4 when we're done, which is a great benefit to the school. We're also going to replace the 2 oldest portables on the site, which are adjacent to the existing playground. And we're going to turn those 90 degrees, so they're going to match the architecture of the school a little better than just putting them out there hodgepodge. And it also has a great benefit of a vista, which I'll explain in a minute here. Also with this project, we're trying to combine 2. So later in the bond, we were planning on renovating the outdoor teaching spaces outside of the permanent classrooms. They are currently asphalt paving that's terrible. They've got dilapidated sinks and countertops. They're not ADA compliant. They don't drain well. So we were looking at doing this project now that it's all in that proximity. It makes sense to do it now. So we're going to try and combine the 2, get all the work done once so we're not impacting the school twice in the same area. And we're also saving some money by having the contractor mobilize once instead of 2 different times. So the new sinks, we will mirror what's there now. If you look at the library building, they renovated some of those outdoor areas, and they've got concrete sinks, and everything's much more durable. So that's our plan there. We're also planning to make them ADA, obviously. And we have some paving areas so that weren't included in the playground project, that aren't really part of the plazas or the patios that we're going to do, that we want to try and clean up. So we want to use some of Measure J program contingency to fund a little bit extra for this project for parts that we don't want to leave torn up. So it'll make the entire process nice and make it look better. So our budget now, if we combine them, is 4.6 total. That's a $4 million construction cost and a $400 contingency. Like I said, we'll use some program contingency for the extra. And what we're planning to do here is we have an existing contract with KBZ. We'd like to terminate that contract, which was for the old plan with the kindergartens, and we're doing a new proposal with this for $425 for this project, which combines both. And so this is what we're planning to make it look like. So down below, you see this is where the old library complex was. So we now have 4 rooms. 3 of them can be joined. They have glass partitions that are raisable in the center. So it can become 3, one big large classroom or 3 separate. The individual room was a site request so that they could use some confidential space if they needed to. Up above, you can see the 2 other classrooms, which are turned 90 degrees. They also have an adjoining wall that can be raised to create that team learning event. The great thing about this is if you look now, the vista outside of this looks at the playground and the field and the golf course and the mountains instead of the side of a building. So we think that's going to be a fairly popular place at Adams School. The numbers that you're seeing are the actual patios that we're going to renovate. So those are outside of all of those classrooms. So there will be 7 of them. They'll also have, you can see some green space, so they'll get a raised garden in each one. So they'll get some kind of an interactive outdoor experience with the kids. They'll get all the new sinks and everything that we talked about. We also have an extra in this, in the gray area in between the 2. We're going to eliminate the existing paving, correct the ADA issues. So now all that area will be interconnected and there will be a big overhang, so it can become an outdoor space for these classrooms as well. So you can see the proximity to the office. We think it's going to be a pretty good project. The site's very excited about it, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have, but we are asking for you to approve the revised KVZ contract with this action item.
I'm just a clarification. I'm just a little turned around. That's Las Positas at the bottom.
That's correct.
Okay, so that is a beautiful view back there. That'd be really nice. Okay, sorry to jump ahead. I just want to make sure I was looking at the right way. Any questions or comments? I think it's exciting. And just to reiterate for the public that this is bond funding.
That's correct.
From the taxpayer voting. So thank you to everybody else. Okay, thank you, Mr. Vizzolini. Oh, we need an action item. We need a motion. So moved. I will move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Vizzolini.
Thank you.
Okay, bringing us to item F6, food service update and recommendations for selected contract terminations.
So we have some, we have 4 public comment. So if the first 3 could come up, Linda Robertson, Pat Keeling, and Annette Muse, and actually I'll call the last one, Leslie Sanderson. So if all 4 would be on the ready. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name's Linda Robertson. I work for the food service in Northern County, Santa Maria. I'm working out of a homeless shelter. I've been here before, so I just want to give you a little information. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I'm really proud to be able to serve the students because basically if they weren't here, we wouldn't have a job. So anyways, I work in a homeless shelter. We serve, the contract up there is to serve Head Start. We serve senior programs. We serve Homebound. We serve Parks and Rec. We serve we're in conjunction with the Food Bank and also CAC. And so I'm not sure what the future holds for any of our programs, but I just feel like it's important for me to talk about where I'm working at right now because all of us live in North County. So I have, including myself, there's 5 of us that work there. And we serve about a couple thousand students every single week. Okay, and I'm just here, I'm very nervous today, but I just want to let you know that that program that's working up there in North County is just as important as the programs that are going on here, and we need to find a way to be able to work together, all of us, both here in Santa Barbara, because Santa Barbara is also Santa Barbara County up there. So we are all one program together. And I realized, why are we working up there? Well, it was a program that Nancy Weiss started a year ago, a little over a year ago. And it's been really beneficial seeing the children that are being taken care of. A lot of kids that don't eat other than what is provided through our programs. Plus, we also do the homeless shelters both in Lompoc and in Santa Maria. And that's another, per day or throughout the week, another 300-400 meals. Plus, we serve breakfast every morning to the homeless shelter. So I'm just here to not only be here for my job, because I am not concerned about my job, but I am concerned about the staff that works with me. And basically, that's why I'm here. So I'd ask if any of you have the time, come up to the North County, see what we're doing. And that's about all I have to say.
Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent, Board. My name is Pat Keelan. I'm the CEO for the Community Action Commission of Santa Barbara County. And I'm here tonight to briefly educate you a little bit about food insecurity here in Santa Barbara County, and to tell you a little bit about the programs and the partnership that we have with Santa Barbara Unified School District. According to Cottage Population Health data, the most recent data, 3 times as many Santa Barbara County residents are food insecure as compared to the national average. That's pretty stunning data. 28,000 Santa Barbara children, Santa Barbara County children, are at risk of not having enough to eat. The issue of food insecurity here in the county is tremendous. And of course, as you know, for children, a nutritious meal means physical health, well-being, and being able to develop the cognitive skills that we're all hoping that they will to be successful in school. Community Action Commission has long operated the Senior Healthy Lunch Program for 45 years. We provide over 155,000 meals to over 1,200 seniors annually. In addition to that, we also have a very large Head Start program countywide. We serve over 920 children annually, and of course provide breakfast, lunch, and snack for them. In the last year, for the first time in 45 years, we no longer operate kitchens. We instead chose to partner with Santa Barbara Unified School District and Nancy Weiss because of the national reputation she had developed around providing healthy food, locally sourced fruits and vegetables, no processed meats, freshly baked breads every day. And so we've made a major transition in our operations in the last year, primarily because the quality of the food was just so important to us. I want to emphasize the fact that the meal rate increases would really impact our operations significantly. And I want to commend Meg for working with us to ensure that our senior meal rate would remain the same. And I would like to encourage the same partnership moving forward with the children's rates. I understand that there's a lot of variability between the different organizations in the meal rates. And I would ask that the board consider moving forward in developing one standardized meal rate. We're here to help partner with the school district. We appreciate what you're doing for the community. It's such a great resource and needed, and we hope that we can continue this partnership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to speak. My name is Annette Sitting Muse, and I am with the UCSB Early Childhood Program here in Santa Barbara. We serve over 400 children annually from our community, mainly families that are of students, staff, and faculty of UCSB. we are one of the nonprofits that were honored to be partnering with the school district. And we've been doing that for about 3 years and receiving high quality, extremely healthy meals for our low income families. A lot of people don't think of UCSB having low income families, but we too have students at the university as well as staff that qualify for low income. And for us, as well as our neighbors, the Isla Vista Youth Projects, I'm also speaking for Notre Dame School, we will miss our great healthy meals with the school district. I want to personally thank Meg for her dedication to bringing a balanced budget to this food program. As the director of multiple sites and centers serving over 400 families, I understand that need. So I don't want the school district to be burdened with trying to balance this particular budget for the food program. I'd like to instead propose that we take a little bit of time and look at possibly doing something with a larger lens, a wider lens, and doing something that might address the food insecurity of so many of our children. And perhaps do some partnership, looking at foundations for those partnerships, as well as our local community investors. I would hope that we could slow this process down a tad bit. This impacts a lot of our budget that is very tight, the fiscal year being July 1 for us, so a proposed increase March 1st. We didn't plan for that, and
30
we don't have
seconds.
that in our budget. So just a thought, let's take a look at food insecurity for all of our children. We are all here for the same goal, and that's to provide the best for our children. So thank you.
Thank you.
Leslie Sanderson again, parent, but also a pediatric dietitian. I don't know if people have known that that is my job. I'm speaking based on my own views and not the views of my employer, however. I have my degree in nutrition and food service administration and a minor in chemistry. And about 10 years ago, I spoke in front of the board. And I think Meg was the only one who was actually here. That's on the dais at that time. I suggested hiring a registered dietitian at that time with experience in the school lunch program. At the time, the lack of knowing the carbohydrate content of the school meals was making it difficult for families and nurses in the district to appropriately dose insulin for students with type 1 diabetes based on the need for carbohydrate counting. And students with food allergies and other diet-related diagnoses were unable to eat safely in the school food service. I was chastised by both the school district administration as well as school board members and received multiple insults to myself and my profession for even bringing this up. It was clear at that point that the district had no desire or inclination to hire someone with an education in nutrition or food service administration. Over the years, the school district added breakfast for all, which was another difficult layer for those with diabetes and other diet-related health issues. The food service director over the years got a hefty salary increase, I believe about $20,000 per year when I was here, and was constantly promoted in the news with stories regarding the mobile cafes, free breakfast, lunch, summer food programs, and even got a federal award in Washington by Salud Carbajal for transforming the school food service program. I was assuming that all of this was being funded by the federal gravy train reimbursement known as the school lunch program, until it wasn't. Now we know the reality of what's not being financially covered. It's easy to be innovative and transformational when you have an unlimited budget. But the reality is that providing free breakfast and lunch costs money. Locally sourced organic produce increases your meal costs, especially in Santa Barbara. Scratch cooking increases your labor and therefore your meal costs. Providing food for multiple programs and travel to these programs increase your food service costs and meal costs. I must admit that this is what the district wanted and actually benefited for
seconds.
many years. But for myself and many of us that work in the profession, we are not surprised by the budget deficit. We are not surprised with the lack of structure and policies and procedures within the department. I think Meg actually described them as loosey-goosey. I would suggest if a plan is to hire to someone without experience in nutrition and food service administration, you might want to consider decreasing the salary by $20,000 and using that extra money to pay for some of these programs. It's really sad that we're probably going to lose some of the food security of children based on the financial
Thank you.
mismanagement.
That concludes our public comment on this agenda item.
Okay, thanks for our speakers. I appreciate it. Mr. Tay.
Thank you, board members. So you've all looked at this document that we have here. On December 16th, the board recommended that I meet with all the programs. And so for the 9 programs that are listed here in this document, I did meet with each and every one of them. And it was my pleasure to meet with them. Things that we discussed were, first of all, I found out like how we deliver the meals and what their company structure was. And we talked about, we do family style, which is the least expensive delivery method, or were we doing family style? And we found out, no, we weren't doing family style on some. So we've talked a lot about how we can reduce the cost for each of these programs. Out of the 9, 2 agreed to pay for the increase, and that was Montecito Union and Friendship Center, which is a senior lunch program. And everyone understood completely the financial issues that we were having with the district, and were very sympathetic to the food service department for that. And they also made comments about how good the food quality was. So, and it was just really good to get to meet each and every one of you and start building a relationship. So I appreciate the board recommending that, and I probably should have done it earlier. So with that being said, you have recommendations in front of you. And so I thought that what I would do is kind of give you my recommendation, and then you can decide whether you want to follow this recommendation. First of all, I want to do the first recommendation is to honor our contracts till June 30th. All but one expire on June 30th. Friendship doesn't expire until December 2020. So I'm recommending that we do continue with these programs till June 30th, 2020. My second recommendation, however, is in July, that I would like to not continue with the CAC Senior and the CAC Head Start. And the reason for that is that the kitchen that's providing those services is 60 miles away. It makes it almost impossible to manage that kitchen 60 miles from Santa Barbara Unified. On the CAC Head Start, only 2 locations are located in the elementary boundaries, and then the rest are all North County or Goleta or Hope, but most of them are North County. The seniors are all North County in Santa Maria. It's problematic because it's hard to manage staff. We have our warehouse go up there twice a week, which is about 4 hours of their time. It pulls the services away from Santa Barbara Unified. But I think that could also hold steady until July 1, obviously. The third is the free breakfast for non-provision school sites. This is costly to the district, and it also is problematic in other ways that I won't get into right now, but visiting the kitchen staff, I'm learning more and more about what actually happens during those breakfast and nutrition breaks, not just in the not just in those non-provision twos, but all provision twos. And then the fourth one, going back to the non-provision twos, but to also start that on July 1 to give our parents plenty of time to be notified of the change for those 6 sites. And then the fourth recommendation is to reduce the mobile cafes. We have a lease for 6 mobiles right now, and I'd like to reduce that just to 2. We still have some programs that we run mobile cafes out of, and we need to probably continue with those at least through the summer. And so that would also be as of July 1. So I'm open for any questions you have about these recommendations.
Any questions or comments from the board? I imagine there's going to be. Ms. Sims-Moten.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Well, thank you, Meg. I know this is a very difficult challenge that we're faced with regards to this, and certainly none of us want to, see anyone go hungry, realizing that. But as I read this, and I appreciate the effort that you put in there and the conversations that you've had with the grantees, if you will, it makes me think about how important it is for us to, that I'm proud that we have this food service in the first place and that we're able to extend that to other folks beyond the district itself. But it's important that we get our house in order first to make sure that we're taking care of us fiscally, to make sure that it still remains as a program, and if we, through the conversations, decide that as a partner within in the community that we can still provide other things, how do we do that? Because this is not a burden or a challenge that we can bear alone. We can obviously see that, and I know that you're continuing to look through that, and how do we continue to be a good partner. And I also appreciate honoring of the contracts, giving folks time to kind of look at their budgets, because everybody's looking at their budgets right now in terms of what's happening for the next fiscal year, and time is really important to have people to be able to look at it, and some of the options you have offered as to what that will actually be. So I appreciate that. The question that I had was 2 things. With regards to the mobile cafes, so you're saying that we have 6 and you want to reduce it to 2, or?
Yes, we own 2.
Okay.
And currently we lease 6. So we're trying to reduce our expenditures. So we would like to reduce it to 4. So we would lease 2 and we would own 2.
And so the other 2, is it possible to work with the other communities to provide that as an option for, to serve, because with regards to the 60 miles, the back and forth, and the difficulty in, in supervising that, the kitchen up north, is it possible to work with those cities or in those communities to be able to support that, the need that's still there, but how do we do that in supporting them perhaps with the 2 that we don't need, or are you suggesting that we,
Well, I suggest that we end our lease that's up in June 30th, because we lease them from someone down in Ventura. So, we don't own them. As far as up north, there's a kitchen, a Good Samaritan kitchen, which CAC used to run their program out of just a year ago.
Okay.
And they used to provide all of these services. But as I said, they're not in the food, that food business. And so, and Nancy was available to provide that service. However, it is 60 miles away. These are not, I hate to say it, but they're not Santa Barbara Unified School District students. And, we are losing money on our own students at this particular time. And I just think we need to kind of get back to Santa Barbara Unified and take care of the kids now in our district.
Yeah. And I hate to add this to your plate, but a question with regards to how do we solve the community? Are we, along with meeting with the ones that we're servicing right now, are we maybe have plans to meet with other city leaders to how do we solve this as a whole community and not just the one entity carrying this?
Yes, we all had that conversation about this is greater than Santa Barbara Unified or any of these 9 programs here. And, we have talked about how we could, I know at least with one program that we had a big conversation about that, about how do we get our community to help fund this. And if there's a way, for some way that we can do this and get compensated for it, we may look for that. We may be able to do that. But right now, on almost every program, we lose on almost every single one of them.
Okay, thank you. I just encourage us to continue working toward a more community, effort. Again, not to add to your plate to that, but that is not an issue that's not going to go away. And so, how do we best put our best minds and thinking to how do we, work it a workable solution so that it's not just burden on one entity, whether it's us or someone else that may be able to take it on. So I appreciate what you've put here. I certainly appreciate the comments and the conversations that you've had in the community. And I know we can work it out. We just got to keep working it through. So thank you. But I'm in support of your recommendations.
Thank you. Ms. Ford.
Thanks for the report. I want to clarify, it looks like the only thing that we're voting on, though, is to approve honoring the contracts through the end of June.
Yes.
Or through the end of their contract time.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, great. The only other comment I would make then is I think these are all really good recommendations, but I would love to see also a commitment to a plan to increase the number of free and reduced applications at a lot of these schools where they don't qualify, with the umbrella kind of approach to free breakfast. Everywhere I've been, it's been a big problem. It's a big issue, but there's no time like now for us to really get serious about that.
So it's our school, our district that can get the free and reduced, and currently we're doing Notre Dame and St. Raphael's. The rest are all vended, meaning they either collect their own reimbursement from the state and the federal government, but we charge them, or we don't.
I'm sorry, can you say that again? I didn't understand that
So
answer.
for example, I think it's UCSB, and I think Storyteller also, we charge them a certain amount for the meal, and then they go and claim the reimbursements. We don't claim their reimbursements. The only ones that we do claim reimbursements for is Notre Dame and St. Raphael's and our own. Some of the northern county at risk.
I was specifically referring to Washington, Goleta Valley, La Colina, Dos Pueblos, San Marcos, and Santa Barbara High.
Our non-provision schools. Yes. Sorry, I misunderstood your question.
Other questions, comments before do you have a question? Yeah. Dr. Reed?
I don't really have a question. I just have a couple of comments. I just wanted to acknowledge that I appreciate you going and meeting with the groups and taking that time, and I think that was important. I think it provides a framework for how we look at our departments, maybe delving in a little closer to really see what's going on and having that personal relationship piece of really understanding, which I think is going to bring us maybe more financially, fiscally more relevant to what we should be doing and really looking closely. So I think maybe we can look at those and integrate those together. I also want to just acknowledge that what my colleague, Ms. Sims-Moten, stated around the really looking to how we can collaborate, because we want to make sure everybody gets what they need, and obviously we can't do everything we would like to do, and we really have to focus on what we need to do for our district. But I do think it is it's an opportunity really to come together and to bring people together to have these conversations and figure out how can we work together, what can we do. And some years in some districts or some situations we might have more money and sometimes we don't, which is right now. So I think the flexibility of really looking at that. So I do think the community effort, the community way of looking, bringing people together to have that conversation is important. And I agree with you honoring the contracts, as you have stated, and that we just need to continue to look closely at what we can do and really be careful. Thank you.
Ms. Munoz.
Yes, I also appreciate, and share the concerns of my colleagues with food security here in our community and beyond with Santa Barbara County and the city of Santa Barbara. I'm certainly aware of the vulnerability of, for example, like the seniors in Santa Maria and the homeless shelter and such. and, you know, these decisions are never easy to make. So I also, you know, echo what Dr. Reed and Ms. Sims Moulton said regarding, you know, you're going out there and meeting with them and such. And I would definitely be interested in community dialogue in the future as to how to meet the needs that, that after the contracts are up, you know, will not be possible. And so, yeah, so I just appreciate that and certainly stress the need to go, like, so then, you know, where do we go from here? And thank you.
Thank you. I just had a couple questions. I appreciate your report and the thoroughness, and I really do appreciate the tone and the comments and the constructive observations from the speakers and our partners. Thank you for understanding this situation that we're in and being here tonight. So just on the mobile trucks, because I've seen the value of them and the ability to pull up and serve dinner and supper and all that. Have you asked, and you probably have, can the leases be reduced?
So far, I have not looked into having them reduce the leases at all, but I can ask. But
that was suggested to me by somebody at the Boys and Girls Club, just that, you know, because they seemed, there's not a lot of people that need mobile food trucks, so we might have that going for us, that we could
Right.
potentially reduce the leases.
It's more than that with the mobile cafes. Yes, they're expensive. They're out there. They're not being used in the way they should be used. They sit quite a bit. I've had reports that there's over 200,000 miles on them. They break down the man who services them comes up on the weekends, and we have to make special arrangements for him to get into the trucks. So they're more problematic than just going out there. And they're a warming and cooling area, and they're not always passing inspections, and so we have issues with them also.
Okay.
But I will check.
Thank you.
I will check on
I appreciate that. And then my second thing, I think it's important just to reiterate that part of the predicament that we're in with this cost overrun was related to the fact, and I'm forgetting the terminology, but how we had to show codes for each student at 3 of our high schools, is that correct? Had to show for the first time, because of an audit, or not an audit, what's the word?
Right, they're what I call rebasing.
Rebasing.
So they
That's right.
rebase to see how many, so you can go for 3 years, right, Gina? 3 years with everybody turns in a free and ready meals plan, and then they put their code in, and it's how many kids are at each site. Then qualifies for Provision 2s. So with the 3 high schools, none of them qualify for Provision 2. So every 3 years, they have to go there and be rebased and see how many. And yes, it slows it down. Numbers are put in. It does slow the count down. They did lose some money on there. But there's other things to this Provision 2 that I'm finding out that's very problematic. And nutrition break is one of them, where kids should be only grabbing one nutritional break free, and they're grabbing more, and we are, they're being claimed as that. So that is a problem in itself.
Sure, but I just think that's an important part of the narrative. Not an excuse, but that this was an unusual situation where, and I just know it as a mom, I mean, they eat so quickly, and if, I mean, I often get, why are you so hungry? I didn't have time for lunch. And it's like, you got to make the time. And so I just understand how, if they have to put in their code and they're not used to putting in their code, how that would really change our numbers. So just to go back to the beginning, I think there was an estimate of around 300,000 of the 800,000 was lost because of that unusual experience that we probably won't see again for at least a few more years.
Well,
and hopefully
it depends on which schools are picked to be
Sure.
rebased.
Okay, great. So that was my 2 questions. And I feel comfortable, of course, I'm happy to support the recommendation of voting to honor our contracts. That's the right thing to do. Beyond that, I want to have further discussion. And I really appreciate the statistics. We are facing, as we know, and it's good, and maybe the one silver lining of this situation is that funders will we can work with potential funders. We have such generous foundations, we have such generous people in this community, and so we have a problem on our hands. We have too many hungry kids. And I think what I'm hearing, and what I know from my experience working in this is we now have a coalition of folks that have worked together. We came together to work for free meals in the summer, and we figured out, okay, food bank is, we have 50 places around the county where any child can get a free meal. And so 7 years ago, approximately, we kind of came together to say, okay, food bank's going to be there, CAC is going to be here, Santa Barbara Unified will cover here. I would just like to see, and it sounds like you're on that path of that kind of, let's figure this problem out, because I think it's important just to restate, the food is reimbursed by the federal government, so it's just a matter of finding out who can provide the food. And I love the fact that in our history, we developed such a reputation under Nancy Weiss's leadership, that programs that had historically done their own food said, wait, we want to do what they're doing over at Santa Barbara Unified. And that thus created this, this situation that we're in. But I just want to acknowledge, because of that, it's really more of a partnership than it is a business arrangement. And we need to, and I hear you, and I can tell in the tone of our partners that this is a partnership. And so what I'd like to see beyond the June 30th is, okay, you can't agree with our rates. It sounds like you're doing it in good negotiating terms, but where else how are you going to find your food? I just want to know with each of them, and it's not too many to have these kind of conversations. So what's your plan? What's the plan so that we know that the kids who have been getting food by Santa Barbara Unified, our good food and our organic food and our healthy food, will be getting it somewhere? That's what I would just ask. And I think given this very reasonable ramp to June 30th, we have time to do that. So again, that's the sentiment I'm hearing from the board, and the sentiment from those who spoke is this is a community challenge. We're a big part of it. We're a proud part of it. And I love, again, just honor the fact that Santa Barbara Unified is the go-to for food. We can't do it quite at the level, at least for now, but maybe we could build back to that in the future. We're going to be looking for a new food service director. So just to restate, I think that's what I would hope to see as we think beyond June 30th is a plan for each of our partners, and to work in collaboration. And if there's any role that I can play in that, I would be happy to do it.
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to reiterate that when you mentioned that we're reimbursed by the federal government, it is not at the rate of the cost of the meal. And that's where we are. So when we go to these other schools and we do not charge them anything more because we're claiming, we are losing money on every single meal we serve. I just want to make that really clear. And now that we're drawing on the educational side of the budget, that's starting to become a big problem. And so I want to work with everyone, and I want to, it's not that we don't want to feed kids and seniors and things, but we also can't run a deficit of $800 to $1 million a year.
I think that we're all in agreement that that's not the path forward. And I imagine that those partners didn't understand necessarily that we were losing by not charging.
No, I think they do now.
They do now. Yeah, but that's the point. We're in this together is the point. Thank you.
So I just want to be clear that you are recommending the voting or recommending my recommendation of just continuing honoring the contracts until June 30th and nothing else, not the closing of the Santa Maria Kitchen, not the provision 2 yet, not the mobile cafes.
I think we just need a little bit more information on that plan, as President Capps had said, but certainly we do it, so when would you be bringing that back to us in terms of those recommendations? Or are you continue to work with others, or how would that come back to us for action?
Well, I mean, I'll come back with the same request for provision 2. That is a huge expense. The mobile cafes also, I'll find out about reducing the leases, or for the ones that we serve out of the mobile cafes, because some mobile cafes, somebody doesn't pay anything for, and another pays $30, and another one pays $130. If we can get the daily rate out of everyone, then maybe we do keep some, but we don't need 8 mobile cafes.
Well, I would hope that I'm not sure when you absolutely need to know that. I'm sure there are other decisions that are impacting this decision tonight. So are you maybe perhaps coming back on the 25th at our next board meeting with those?
Well, with the mobile cafes, yes. Provision 2, that's in your hands right now. I don't know if I can tell you any more. I'm not sure what you need to know more about Provision 2s. But working with the programs, I can send them again what we're proposing, and we can work together. But the contracts are over on January 30th, so we need to know prior to June 30th, sorry.
Okay.
We need to know probably by mid-April which programs are going to pay and which ones aren't going to be able to do it. But what you were saying is you want to know where they're going to go and get their meals after, if, okay.
I do.
So maybe March?
Okay.
Because
So
I
that
need
gives you
time
enough
to meet
time
with
to-
everyone.
Okay. Right.
Great.
Thank you.
So we need a motion for the recommendation to continue contracts through June 30th, to continue the existing contracts.
So moved.
We don't need a, do we need a
You don't
motion?
need
Well,
action on
I just
that?
want to ask we have existing contracts
It's in the action.
through
Yes.
June 30th.
Right.
So
Right.
you're just reaffirming a contract that's already in place.
So is the action
that's
to
fine.
reaffirm the
That's
closeout
fine.
because it's on here? So, okay. So is
So
that the
we're-
motion we need to
So we're in
make?
agreement, but I don't believe we need an action.
You don't need an action?
No, I don't think so, not
No.
without no, we have contracts.
Great.
Okay, so then when you bring it back in March, those specific things will come back as action, so we're real clear, right? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tay and everybody, and to the board. Appreciate it. We'll move on, and we're actually going to take a break in between action agenda and report discussion. And just a little agenda management, because we have our search firm joining us by phone. We are going to return, and we're going to set up the phone during the break. And so we're going to switch around the item 3 to G3 will be in front of G1. But it won't be as,
You want to
Yeah.
do the health?
yeah.
quick thing?
And then we'll get, I know a lot of you are here for item G2. We'll go right to that next. Yes, it won't be too long. The break is about 5 to 7 minutes, so we're just going to set up a conference call, which is a little unusual for us, so we wanted to use the break in order to do that. Thank you. Okay. All right, everybody, we are getting back to business here. We are moving the agenda just a bit to accommodate our search firm for the superintendent, who is joining us by phone, and we have not done this before, so we wanted to take advantage of the break to get Ben Johnson and Dr. Adams on the phone. But we're moving to item G3. That is my item, and it's exciting to give a quick update on the superintendent search. I will, Mr. Johnson and Dr. Adams are on the phone to speak a little bit and to take any questions from the board. We'll see how this works with technology. It seems to be working, but let me just make sure that they are, can you hear?
We can hear you fine,
Oh,
thank
good.
you.
That actually works really well. Wonderful. Okay, so I will give my update. The main one is that we have the next stage of the process is really to hear from the community. That's a key important part now that we've hired a firm and we've spent since our last meeting when we approved that contract, we've spent time, not as a board because this is a public process, but individually I've spent time with the search firm devising the next crucial step, which is community input. And so we have determined that 2 weeks from now, we will have 2 days of stakeholder meetings, with a public portion on February 25th. I'm sorry, February 24th. It's Monday. It'll be, and notification's already gone out, but we'll make sure everybody knows. It'll be from 6:30 to 7:30 at LaCoumbre Junior High. All are welcome. It'll be facilitated by Ben Johnson and his colleagues, Dr. Adams and others, and there'll be translation, and it's for literally anybody in the community, whether you're a parent, whether you're an activist, whether you're an elected official, whether you are a student, anybody is welcome. So that's the number one update, because we've settled on that date, which would be 2 weeks from yesterday, a Monday. They will be doing, I'll just stop and ask if there's any questions about that or anything to add about the public portion. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you,
Sure.
President Capps. I think the one thing that we had talked about too was, could we also accommodate a session where the session will be done in Spanish? And we can do that. We can actually have co-sessions going on, or we can do it afterwards, whatever. My thought is you could have two sessions really at 6:30, one that would be completely done in Spanish, and then you could have one that could be done in English if that would be easier for the community.
Oh, that's great. And we just to reiterate, though, also there will be, for the folks who are part of DLAC, there will be a separate session just for those parents who are so active already, and that'll be prior to that during the stakeholder meetings. But this is a good suggestion that I'm glad you're open to exploring. I'm seeing head nods for a simultaneous session in just Spanish, so there's not translation. Does that sound like a good?
Yeah, we can make that. We can make that happen. I think the only thing that we would need is someone that could scribe the highlights from those meetings, so we make sure we capture the community's comment. But yeah, we can make that happen without a problem.
Okay, great, excellent. So let's just, before we move on to the rest of the 2 days, which I will just go over briefly, are there any questions or comments from the board about that? About the community listening session? Yeah, Ms. Munoz.
Yes, hi. I think the session in Spanish would be helpful. It would, be able to have a free dialogue, and just firsthand input by the parents and by any attendees in the community. I think it's a great idea.
Excellent.
Thank you. All we need to do now is find a location, and we could do it, like I said, at the same time as we're doing the other location. That way it would be at 6:30 in the evening.
Great. Okay, good. Thank you. Ms. Sims-Moton.
I do have a question. Thank you, President Capps. Just a question with regards to, since we're having the session simultaneously, will we get feedback from each session? I'm assuming if he's having a scribe, so we'll be able to hear what was happening in both ones? Okay.
Yeah, so maybe I could give
so
it, yeah, go ahead.
No, please. Yes, we will. We'll get feedback from all of our sessions when we come back to meet with the board. On the 25th, during the board meeting, we will give an executive summary of the feedback we heard from the individual group sessions and from the community meeting on the 24th.
Excellent. Okay, great. So just to speak more holistically about the 2 days, the 2 days will be chock full, 8:30 to 7:30 of the search firm running stakeholder meetings with every group and parent group, et cetera. We're going to be doing that outreach now, community leaders, et cetera. But again, everyone's invited to the community meeting at 6:30 on that Monday. But we really value the input. This is a really important process, and maybe Mr. Johnson or Dr. Adams can speak to what then will happen after hours and hours of hundreds of people have been listened to and their thoughts are taken, and what will you do with that next?
So from a high level, we will take that information and give you at your board meeting, so the next day. So it'll be very high level, but we'll kind of identify the major themes that we've heard from all the stakeholder groups, and give you what that is at the board meeting. That's a public session item.
Right.
After that, we will take all the information that we got, and one thing I forgot to mention, if you cannot make one of the community meetings, but still have, and are not coming to one of the stakeholder meetings, the online web version is still available, so you can give kind of feedback there as well. And if there's something more detailed that you don't see on the online, my phone number is available. You can call myself or Dr. Adams. That's part of the process. But we will give a very detailed report to the board. My gut is roughly 2 weeks after we are done with the sessions, that will provide verbatim what we heard. We will break it down by stakeholder groups. We won't say what person said what, but we'll tell you what voice that the information came from. And then we do recommend to the board that once that document is completed, and then depending on the feedback and amount of feedback we get, it can be 5 pages or it can be 50 pages, We recommend you make that available online to your community because it's part of the process to hear what the community said about what's good about the district, the challenges, where you want to see the district move, all those kind of discussion points. We recommend you make that public and have it a link to your website for that. But we will use those themes to kind of further build upon not only criteria, not really criteria, but questions and that the board will ask of the candidates, because we'll identify where the community's concerns are and also where the board's concerns are.
Great. Ms. Ford.
Thank you so much. I find myself wondering what the process or the procedures will be in the community meeting. I wonder if Mr. Johnson could kind of give a sort of a high level description of what will happen that evening, and I think it would really excite people to know what to expect.
Thank you. So we will really kind of focus on 4 key areas to make sure that we're kind of staying really on what's important, but having dialogue with the community about what their concerns are, what's great about the district, what the challenges are, kind of what I mentioned before. The dialogue isn't much different than what's taking place in the individual stakeholder meetings. The difference is it's just open to a broader audience, and then it allows us to kind of further clarify what we're hearing from the community at large. I will say this, though. I've done a ton of these, and in most cases, the high-level themes are pretty consistent from across the district when people are involved and know what's going on. You don't see much disparity between what's happening in the smaller groups and the larger groups. It just reinforces kind of what those things are, I think, to the board.
Excellent. Other questions? Yeah, Ms. Munoz, or comments?
In other districts, have you done this in 2 languages, with the 2 sessions simultaneously?
We've done both, translation and simultaneous. We serve at the pleasure of the boards. We work for school boards, so whatever you think is best for your community, that's what we'll try to accommodate. I think the most important thing is that this board has been, throughout this process, and I will say this doesn't happen all the time, has prioritized making sure that all voices in the community are being heard, and that's exceptional.
Excellent.
Right. The concern with, I was just thinking about that after, because if someone who, is primarily Spanish speaking wants to attend the session in English, and just a little bit of a separation there, I'm just wondering about, I'm just having second thoughts about.
Well, we'll have a separate session in Spanish, right? But if they can't make that, there's the online version that will enable them to, obviously it's not exactly the same, but their voice is counted at the same level as anybody else that would attend. And I will say this, before we started doing the online sessions, our community meetings, of course, were larger, but I will say that in most cases, we see a huge number of people doing it online, because it's just they can do it at any time they want when it's convenient for them.
Correct. This, one of the concerns is with online is that, some of our families, some of our stakeholders don't have access to online. And also, I'm just having second thoughts about.
Sure. Well, how about this? I mean, I think this
Go ahead.
This was
really. What are you thinking?
Oh, go ahead.
Right. I was thinking maybe about having a session, with the translation available, so that the expression could be, at one session, so that we'd be more unified in that.
Yeah. So.
We could absolutely. The district could provide. So here's what we could do if you think it would have value. It's the board's decision, right? We were just offering to having 2 sessions, because that's typically. We typically do 1 session, right? But if the population is large enough, I would think there would be value of having 2 sessions, quite frankly.
Mr. Matsuoka, did you have an observation?
Yeah, I'm trying to stay out of this, but I'm still your superintendent. The idea of dividing the community by language and culture bothers me. And I'm going to
That's
ask
why I
Ms.
brought that
Carey
up
to just
after.
speak about, I mean, we've spent years building our language translation unit, and yes, it's cumbersome, but there's something about everybody being in the same room, hearing the same words, even though through different languages, and we have really strong tools to handle that. Now, a large crowd would be challenging, but you know, we've got an awesome team. So,
Yeah, thank you for the
We,
opportunity.
we can
just to
do we
assert
can
that
we
our-
can do whatever the board wants, right? So, like I said, in most situations, it's one group that speaks to everybody. But if you want to, where you if you're expecting that kind of volume, and there's concerns. Every community is different, but I'll leave it at that.
I would just want to assert that on behalf of the district and certainly on behalf of the Language Access Unit, we would strongly recommend one session as a community with bidirectional interpretation provided. We have the capacity to do that for scores of people, for large groups. We've done it before in auditorium settings. So we're prepared to do that, and we would prefer that. And we certainly would welcome other audiences that might be for specific groups of stakeholders or parent groups. But as far as the primary forum for the public, I want to just strongly recommend the joint session with the interpretation support.
Great, and just to clarify,
So-
that recommendation came through staff, so Mr. Johnson is kindly responding and accommodating. So that's why we're talking about this, is it was a recommendation to do 2 sessions, and he said, sure, we can, but if the consensus is to not do 2 sessions, it's a nice opportunity to weigh both and see where we've come out on sticking with our original plan, which is just 1 session. Is that okay with everybody on the board? But again, just thank you to Mr. Johnson and Dr. Adams for being accommodating and certainly wanting to do what we want to do here. So I'm going to put Ms.
So I do have a quick question.
Yes.
So with that, if the district is going to be doing the translation, that means we do not need to have another staff member come down. Dr. Adams and I will do it like we initially planned, and then not have to bring another staff member. Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't want to speak for our language access unit. I think that we can maybe work those details
Sure.
offline,
Well,
but I
let's-
know that we will need to probably rely on equipment and other assets that we have, which we can certainly lend to the event.
Great.
So I think we can just work out the
Okay.
details.
Great.
Thank you.
So thanks for bringing up the survey. I'm going to put Ms. Barnwell on the spot because I think it's really important for everybody in the community to know first about this community meeting, but also the fact that there is a survey. And would you just speak briefly to how the channels by which that has gone out and the fact that it's still open?
Are you asking? You asked me to do that?
Yeah, no, that's
Can
for,
you hear me?
that's for, yeah, no, not for you, but for Ms.
Thank
Barnwell.
you. Yeah.
Candy Barnwell.
No, I just wanted to remind everyone that there's been a survey that's been posted on our website, both languages. So if you just go to our landing page, you'll see it right there. You can click on it, it takes you straight to the survey. We sent it out through Parent Square. It's all over social media. So hopefully most of you have seen it, and if you haven't, just go to the website, SantaBarbaraSBUnified.org.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions or comments? I just want to, again, thank for the community and members who are here, or anybody watching on television. This is so important. We want to be as inclusive of everyone's ideas and thoughts and inputs. So I've found Mr. Johnson over the last few weeks to be highly accessible. So you can either reach out to him or his colleagues. You can reach out to us. But they're conducting this search at the beginning. I do want to note, actually, that reminds me, we will not be present at the community session or any of the stakeholder meetings. That's for the community to really give their candid input. And the board's role comes in after that, after we get the synopsis. So you will not see our faces at that community meeting, but it's something that we're very much behind, as you can tell. And just really want to reiterate that this is the time for you to speak out, share your observations, your comments, your hopes, and any questions you might have, and we'll make sure that they get answered. So thanks. I'm impressed that this worked by the phone so clearly, and I think that concludes this agenda item. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
The other thing that we did want to, and if it's not agendized, we did want to confirm some dates, and if the board is wants to pursue discussion on, as we talk about stakeholders, a community panel is part of that process. So I just want to see where we are, if that needs to be a separate item.
You can, I mean, you have the floor. This is just a report, this is just a discussion anyway. There's no action to be taken, so it can fall under, fall under this agenda item if you want to talk about future dates.
So I would like the board's thoughts, and we had talked initially about the interviews of candidates on May 2nd and May 3rd, and I want to know if those dates, or the 9th and 10th, so I want to know if those dates still work for the board. Because it's part of our process. So it may seem like a long way away, but as part of our process, we will be letting candidates know, all candidates know, when the potential dates for interviews will be with the board.
So that's over the weekend. How about, okay. Anybody else know of their plans at this stage? We can also provide these of later dates as well. I'm open for both too. But, yeah, great. But it looks as though the second weekend is preferable.
Which is the 9th and 10th?
Uh-huh.
Is that Mother's Day? Is that May?
It's usually Mother's Day. It's my birthday too. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. Well, we can finalize that, but it sounds like we have some consensus, some tentative consensus. Okay. Thank you for flagging that. Anything else, Mr. Johnson or Dr. Adams? While you have...
Dr. Adams, do you have anything else that you wanted to add? I did want to just cover those two things. I think it really is critical as we think about our timeline, and it may take a few more minutes just to make sure that we're all on the same page relative to the board did a survey as well to kind of talk about their priorities, and it seems like it's pretty much a consensus, the concerns of the board and where they think those are. And so I just wanted to kind of talk about that briefly, but I also wanted to kind of make sure that we're schedule-wise we're good for the three things that are next. So we have, I'm looking, sorry, my eyes are focusing on my computer. We expect the application process to close March 13th.
Okay.
So that we kind of went a little bit longer because we have some time, and so there's no reason to rush that process. And then we wanted to have a special board meeting because we will need to spend a lot of time either with reviewing candidates, talking about questions, and that usually is a very long meeting, and I wanted to do that separate from the regular board meeting. So I was thinking either March 30th or April 6th. And those are both Mondays. I'm trying to keep everything at a regular board meeting, but I just know that in my experience that with your regular business, this would make it, it would make it a long meeting.
Yeah, and we can also send this. We can communicate this by email. We just so you know, Mr. Johnson, we have a lot of folks here ready to speak to the next item. So I think it might be more efficient to just exchange these dates over email, which is completely fine per the Brown Act. So is that all right?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's fine. And the last thing I just wanted to mention, the board, we need to determine if we're going to use a community panel for the interview process.
I think we're not quite there yet. Yeah.
Okay.
But I appreciate
it. Just something to consider.
Yeah,
and then we're done.
Yeah, no, it's good for you to keep us up to speed on where we're going next. But we're set on this next piece of this next phase, and thanks for identifying some of the decisions that need to be made next.
You are welcome. Have a good day, board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to the board.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thank you, board. Everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you everybody for your patience. That concludes that agenda item. Moving back, we're going to go in reverse order here, so we'll go to G2. I know we have quite a few speakers for the presentation of junior high school health instructional materials.
Yes, we do. We have around 22 speakers, and so because of that, we are going to move to 2 minutes apiece. Because if we were 3 minutes, we'd be here for another hour, and so we want to give everyone ample time, but we also want to be considerate of the time that we're here. So I'm going to read off a 3 at a time, and we will then ask for 30-second reminder, and then if you could complete in a timely fashion. Thank you. Our first speaker is Barbara Battistini, and Karen Januzik, and Linda Bonet.
Before I go there, I only have my full 2 minutes.
Will you?
Good evening. My name is Barbara Battistini, and I'm a former junior high and high school teacher. Good evening to the school board members and superintendent. It's a long night. An increasing number of us here in Santa Barbara who are made up of parents, grandparents, citizens, and teachers are presenting 2 objectives today at the school board meeting. Our first objective is to show the school board members that the current 2 curriculums that are being proposed for adoption for the junior high health curriculum do not comply with AB 329. Following me, each person that speaks in this group over here will be covering a session of teen talk showing the incongruence to the law. We will, for record's sake, identify those 15 items this evening, hoping that you will listen with an open heart. We understand that you are not always able to research these materials in depth, so we have done some of that work for you. Our second objective is to present to you a family-friendly curriculum that does not expose our children to the many unacceptable variables that, for one, indoctrinate our children and groom them for sexuality. We present to you in this package the HEART curriculum, the package that I just gave you. That's a portion of it. To replace any of the 5 state government suggested curriculums that all send our children to Pandora's box. The HEART curriculum is being used in other districts and does comply with AB 329. It complies with all California Ed Codes requirements confirmed by audit using the OSHWAG CAT tool. In all respect, we are asking you to use it. In all respect, we hope this is responded to in a wholeheartedly because most parents are unaware of the great grief that lies before us all.
Thank you.
With Planned Parenthood, ACLU, and LGBT activist groups that show their materials. Thanks.
We really want to keep to the time, so when I ask for you to stop and thank you, I would like you to please stop. Thank you.
Thank you. And we like clapping here, but let's keep everything respectful and as quick as possible, just so we don't have a long night. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Karen Januzik, and I'm a parent in the Santa Barbara Unified School District. I have a 3rd grader boy and a 9th grade girl at DP. And I'm actually going to read some of the excerpt from Teen Talk, and some of it's graphic, but if our kids are going to be taught it, we need to know it and talk about it too. So this is one example directly from Teen Talk, which is one of the choices, showing it's, anyway. And it's written for 12 to 14-year-old children. So the sexual behavior tree, which is activity 4.2 PowerPoint. Number 1, discuss the roots of the tree. Senses, feelings, thoughts, attraction. Explain that anytime people engage in a sexual behavior, they should first check in with their own thoughts and feelings. Number 2, explain why consent is at the center of the tree. Consent is giving permission or a mutual agreement to do something. It is completely normal to feel a bit nervous when initiating physical contact. Number 3, describe the 4 branches of the tree. Number 1, sexual touching. This includes hand to genital contact, hand touching a penis, vulva, or anus, and genital skin-to-skin contact, touching or rubbing naked genitals against another person's naked genitals, oral sex using a mouth on a penis, vulva, or anus, vaginal sex, inserting a penis into a vagina, anal sex, inserting a penis into an anus. And you guys, that's not safe for kids. Condoms aren't approved for them because they break. And teaching kids that this is a normal, good option for them.
30 seconds.
Okay, it's not the best for them. Okay, then there's also a genderbread man image that can confuse the young people of their biological sexual identity, asking them what gender they are while giving a spectrum of choices. And junior hires, they're figuring out their identity, and they're becoming adults, but they're still kids. And I just feel they need to have the freedom to be who they are and figure that out without this pressure to label them. And I've seen firsthand, my daughter's best friend has decided she's non-binary. So anyway, it's just led to confusion. Oh, please adopt this art curriculum.
Good evening, board and long-suffering audience. My name is Linda Bonnet, and I'm a grandmother of 3 children in the Santa Barbara School District, and a baby that's in a few years will be in the same school district. That's why I have concerns about the Teen Talk curriculum. There we go. In the opening lesson, Teen Talk confuses 7th and 8th graders with legalese about giving consent to sex. It grooms them instead of protects them. The stated goal of CHYA, California Healthy Youth Act, is to give them knowledge and skills for protecting their sexual and reproductive health. 18 years old is still the age of consent in California. For example, a 21-year-old male can receive a long prison sentence for having sex with a 17-year-old female. Question: why does Teen Talk teach 12 and 13-year-olds sexual consent when it's an over 18-year-old or an adult issue? The Mandatory Reporting Act for children under 18 states that if you encourage a child to engage in an obscene sexual contact, you are breaking the law. Teaching kids about
30
obscene...
seconds.
Okay. Let's see. Teaching kids about obscene aspects of sex is encouraging them to do so. Okay, my big question is, why does Teen Talk teach 7th and 8th graders about explicit sexual consent when doing so under 18 is against the California state laws? I would really like you all to ask that question to yourself when you're considering Teen Talk.
Thank you. All right, so we have Lisa Sloan, Helene Wilrich, and Rod Walters.
Good evening, President Capps and members of the board. I'm Lisa Sloan from Goleta, and my 2 children graduated from Dos Pueblos. In the Teen Talk 2018 curriculum for the California Healthy Youth Act, Session 1, Introduction, Values, Clarification, Parent Communication, and Resources, here we find problem number 2. The pre-test injects sexual topics too extreme for middle school children. According to citizen volunteer and author Skip Hellawell, many of these topics are not required by CHIA. Teen Talk questions explore a list of sexual topics, which includes how pregnancy happens, condom use, urination source, clinics for sex care, no parent permission for medical consent, birth control duration, emergency contraception, abortion, HIV in saliva, whether you can detect STI by looking at someone, age to buy condoms, and issues of sexting. Are these topics appropriate for middle school age children? Were the parents of grade school students informed about this sexually explicit curriculum? One of the resources provided for students is a link to Planned Parenthood, which includes a series of pornographic videos teaching students how to engage in sexual activity
30 seconds.
with consent, STI protection, and pregnancy prevention. The Planned Parenthood website illustrates these concepts using role play videos acted out by couples initiating various sexual behaviors with one another. The role plays include homosexual couples kissing and heterosexual couples disrobing together in bed. These pornographic videos certainly are not age appropriate. In summary,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Hi, my name is Helene Wilrich, and I'm going to go into the third value exercise that this book comes up with. It adheres to a Lord of the Flies group social pressure, as these students are required by physical movement to agree or to disagree with the value statements, which they have not been prepared for and might be asked to explain. This is more about group influence than sex ed. Neutral positions are not allowed. There's no guidance as to what a healthy choice or behaviors would be. Some of these value questions go way beyond the Healthy Youth Act. Here's some of the topics. Don't seem to have much to do with values. 1, it is normal to masturbate. 2, middle school students are mature enough to have sex. 3, it is okay to have sex with lots of people. The inference that sex with a few people is fine. 4, people should be able to express their gender however they want. 5, get tested for sexually transmitted diseases before having sex. The implication that minors having sex is okay if done safely. We're talking about 6th, 7th grade, 8th grade kids here.
30 seconds.
It's easy for teens to get sex help services. Having a baby is one way to keep a relationship. Middle school kids can be good parents. I have all the books, which I will bring to the next meeting, that are available to these children. Thank you. This has been an education for me, too.
Thank you. Next, we have Eileen Kovacevic, Sharon Jakotka. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, come on down. And then we'll have Eileen, and then we'll have Sharon, and then we'll have Miki Hamill.
Good evening. My name is Rod Walters, and I have children who have graduated from Roosevelt, Santa Barbara Junior High, and Santa Barbara High School. Okay, I'm here to talk about the teen talk in the section Giving Your Parents the Talk. It undermines the legal rights of and respect for the role of the authority of parents. The material includes statements that include, what would you do if your parents' values don't agree with yours, including advice such as, sometimes we just have to agree to disagree. You can say, I can see what you're saying, but I don't agree. I think that, ... And if your parent or guardian starts to lecture or yell, just gently remind them that you're just asking questions. Also includes guidance for some people. It might be better to look for advice and information from other adults that you can trust. I like the heart education and relationship training approach of including parents by using the triangle model of the value-laden nature of sex education and legal rights of parents. The learning process takes the form of a triangle. Teachers share the information and facilitate the learning process. Pupils take an active role in class and conduct parent interviews at home to learn
30
about
seconds.
values and make decisions for their lives. A packet of parent interview questions for lessons in 7 through 12 are provided for each home. Parents who know best and love their children teach their values, share their lessons of their lives prompted by parent interviews. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Eileen, and I think what I'm going to do instead of read from the script is to talk to you as parents and grandparents. I know that you have children in your life that are near and dear to you, and that if they got hurt outside, you'd want to know what happened and all that. I was 11 when I started 7th grade, 11 years old. Can you imagine an 11-year-old hearing some of this stuff? I'll bet you guys haven't read this curriculum. It's atrocious. And I would have been emotionally distraught and harmed by this. And I think that we have to realize that some of these kids are not going to be able to handle this. And by trying to use words that would be fun or play a game like stick the parts on the pelvis, that's not a fun thing to do. This is supposed to be love. This is supposed to be, you find your mate in life, and that is your love partner. So I'm just appealing to your hearts. I just really ask you to really think about this. I have 2 grandbabies that come to my house every week. I take them horseback riding, and I cry. I cry because I don't want them to be damaged by this, and they will be. So please, it's my heart just asking you as a mom, father, grandparents, love these little guys. We prepare students for the world
30
that is yet
seconds.
to be created. What world do we want to create for these guys? Think about it.
Hi, my name's Sharon Yegotka, and I'm a parent of 2 boys. I have a son at Roosevelt School. He's in 4th grade, and I have a son in 7th grade at Santa Barbara Junior High. And I'm very active in their lives and their activities. I'm going to speak on Session 3, Gender and Sexual Identities. CHY requires that 3 terms be taught: gender, gender expression, and gender identity. Exploration of any harm from gender stereotypes is also required, though it should be supported by scientific studies. The lesson goes beyond a reasonable interpretation of CHY requirements, such as the non-scientific idea that sex is assigned as though randomly, when in fact gender has always been recognized by the presence of male or female genitalia. 2, introduces the non-scientific gender-bred identity, PREDSI, which suggests that gender is a preference than a scientific reality present in every cell of the body. Introduces the confusing and rare birth defect of intersex, a term not mentioned in CHYA. Introduces other terms not in CHYA, including cisgender, transgender, non-binary, genderqueer, gender fluid, agender, gender neutral, androgynous, asexual, pansexual.
30 seconds.
And SOGI. Middle school students are typically experience puberty, the first phase of adolescence, and their gender identifying and expression is not clear. This school-based intrusion into their natural sexual development has potential for harm and violates the rights and role of parents who best know and love their children. The reference video materials, intersex, straight lace, and a place in the middle will offend values of most parents and go beyond the requirements of CHYA. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we have Mickey Hamill, Mary Hudson, Peggy Wilson, and Jacqueline Kroc.
Hi, Board. So I'm speaking on Session 4, not having sex or abstinence. And the lesson that students get is they've had 265 minutes of sex teaching that go beyond reasonable interpretation of the California Healthy Youth Act requirements, and at this point, 35-minute lessons on abstinence negatively expressed as not having sex rather than focusing on positive benefits of waiting until maturity of adulthood is presented to the kids. The problem is it's always about the sex, and it fails to build a foundation of support for abstinence, but rather continues the practice of repeatedly introducing sexual topics to middle school 11 and 12-year-old children, including oral and anal, even before mentioning conventional sex, even without even noting the laws against sex for minors. Body and genital touching are also introduced. A discussion of activity of the 3 forms of sex in terms of risk of pregnancy and STIs, introduction of hickeys. But there is but one abstinence-related activity, and it is only an additional activity. It has one relevant topic out of 4 options offered, ways to show affection without sex.
30 seconds.
This one discussion is completely sidetracked by mentioning to children how to make a hickey, thus injecting a sexual activity into ways of showing affection without sex. No wholesome reasons for abstinence are provided. Presuming topic number 4 is selected by the teacher and 10 minutes is spent on it, we finish session 4 having spent just 10 minutes out of 300 minutes on the main point of CHIA is to delay sex until
Thank you
maturity.
very much. If we could have our
as
next
the only
speaker.
medical safe protection for sexual and reproductive health.
Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent, members of the board. My name is Peggy Wilson. I have 3 grown children and 3 grandchildren. In the Teen Talk 2018 curriculum for CHIA, session 6, pregnancy options, falls short of the stated purposes for CHIA. Okay, so number 9, pregnancy for a minor girl is a difficult and highly emotional topic with significant and long-lasting consequences. The lessons present the basic information about options, but little or no information about the emotions and consequences, okay, of being pregnant. This is a huge disservice to girls who may become pregnant or have pregnant friends. And number 10, although the options to terminate pregnancies are presented, there's no information on protecting the health of the embryo or fetus or neonatal care or instructions. This focus on termination doesn't address the very real emotional and lasting consequences of terminating a pregnancy. So these things fall short of the CHIA Healthy Act saying they want to provide knowledge and skills to protect students' sexual and reproductive health and safe relationships and behaviors. Lastly, I want to say after reading this really excellent HEART curriculum, and it really is, it incorporates, thank you, all the stated goals of CHIA without being over-sexualized. So I hope the Santa Barbara School Board will adopt this curriculum, will read it with an open mind, and look at the other curriculum that we're all talking about and very upset about. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Peggy Wilson?
I was Peggy Wilson.
I'm sorry. Dr. Jackie Kroc? Then we'll have Justin Shores, Deborah Keel, and Greg Hamill.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jackie Kroc, and I'm a physician in Santa Barbara, internal medicine, but I'm also a parent of 2 children attending the school in the elementary school, and I'm thanking you very much for your willingness to listen to us tonight. I wanted to present problem number 11, and that is anal sex. Because anal sex will happen, pupils deserve accurate protective information. The full CDC guidelines for HIV risk reduction are not presented, and specific guidelines for testing are not included, nor is there a reference to connect pupils to the CDC-approved protections. Though anal sex is introduced as one of 6 forms of risk for HIV, factual information about the much greater magnitude of the risk for men having sex with men is not presented, nor is information presented regarding the much higher risk for the receptor of the sex act. It is also not noted that condoms are not FDA approved for anal sex. Teen Talk does not comply with the
30
law.
seconds.
Teen Talk does not comply with the law, California Healthy Youth Act. The purpose, which is to inform and protect children from unhealthy sexual practices. Thank you so very much for your attention and your consideration.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Justin Shores. Thank you, board, for having us talk. I'm talking about session 7, sexually transmitted infections. The lesson provides information on 9 common STIs, but it tends to whitewash them. Understanding the seriousness of the diseases, making a disservice to pupils and the people that they're trying to teach about the diseases. The number of STIs and the resistance of treatment has increased dramatically over the past few years. Girls experience STIs much differently than boys and are much more vulnerable to harm, so this is information that they should be receiving. This curriculum is why I took my kids out of the public school this year. I put my kids in private school because of this stuff, and it scared me. I'm going to church now more because of this, because this is scary. I don't want my kids indoctrinated by this, so I will not be attending the school district because of this, and I'm paying out of my pocket so my kids can have a education that doesn't have this, just so you know, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent and Board. I'm Deborah Keel, and I live in Goleta. I'm a former junior high and high school teacher. And what I'm going to be talking to you about is Session 8 in relationships. Following the examples of the Teen Talk does not meet the requirements of the AB 329. Healthy relationships based on mutual respect and affection are the California Healthy Youth Act emphasis. So mutual respect and affection. Sadly, there is little in this lesson that teaches the needed knowledge and skills for wholesome and healthy relationships. As in prior lessons, the emphasis is on sex, including the darker sides of sex. Some examples from 8.2, healthy reasons to want a relationship. Middle school students are given choices, partners, not defined, hooking up, and friends with benefits, suggesting a sexual benefit. Long-term committed relationships and marriage, adult relationships. In Section 8.3, sex trafficking, they show the dark side of exploitive relationships as one part of their 2 options. In 8.4, join in one love. They have cartoon characters that might be minors, ages and it's not identified, to discuss the relationship problems of intensity, control, anger, put-downs, disrespect, and guilt. And some of these couplets infer a sexual aspect to their
30 seconds.
relationships. So knowledge and skills for healthy and wholesome relationships typical of middle school pupils are not well taught and are displaced by adult topics. This is a major failing of compliance with California Healthy Youth Act. Thank you.
Thank you. After Greg Hamill, we'll have Marina King, Jill Rivera, and Janet Price.
Okay, my name is Greg Hamill. Going to get to the point really quick. As part of the decision-making process, Teen Talk, religious context is not even mentioned, even though most major religions have strong beliefs with regards to sexual morality. What Teen Talk is and what the school district is proposing is to teach the religion of secular humanism. Okay? Most major religions adhere to abstinence. and most of our children's parents are of these religions, whether they're Judaism, Christianity, Islam. And in those religions, abstinence and sex, abstinence to be for kids, and sex is reserved for marriage. Okay? The First Amendment of the Constitution, the Establishment Clause, does not allow public schools to promote one religion over another, and that's what you're doing. It is against the Constitution for Teen Talk to exclusively promote the secular humanist religion, which it does. So you should know that the courts have repeatedly at federal level, most recently in 2014 in Oregon, have cited that secular humanism is a religion. So it's a settled case. So if you go down this road,
30 seconds.
You may be opening yourself up to legal issues. You should know that. And you should also know that you are promoting secular humanism in the face of what 90% of the parents don't want. Parents want their kids to be abstinent, and they want the kids to have sex in the union of marriage. It's a high bar, and the kids may not meet it, but that's the goal we set for them.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Marina King, and I have a son who went to La Colina Junior High and Dos Pueblos High. Thanks for having us here. So I'm going to be talking about session number 12, which is the review session, and the issue problem number 15, which has more to do with committed relationships and marriage. So throughout history, marriage and family have been the primary foundation of the society. There's no significant marital talk about marriage in the 12 lessons that provide they don't provide knowledge and skills building for training, for building committed relationships such as marriage, or that even note the many benefits of marriage. So I think that there needs to be a lot more emphasis on building healthy relationships and committed relationships so that we could have, that these kids can have some success, because there's so much failure in relationships these days. And they need to know, they need to have the tools so that they can have the strong relationships, and that will make a stronger and more stable society overall. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Janet Price, and I was an educator for 19 years. And we've talked a lot about negatives of some of the curriculum that you're considering, and I just want to talk about the positives of the HEART curriculum. It complies with all California Education Code requirements. It engages parents in the triangle model of teacher, student, parent interaction. This is the model spoken before that pupils use the parent interview to discuss value questions from each lesson with their parents. It allows the teachers to present required information without becoming caught in the sexual values crossfire. It is medically accurate and age appropriate. It is based on teaching inclusive relationships of mutual trust and affection. It provides balanced information about both sexual risk avoidance and sexual risk reduction based on the CDC guidelines. It also empowers the student to research and make their own decisions about the best time for their sexual debut with ongoing guidance from their parents. It gains parent support by respecting individual family values. It is also designed to provide annual reminders for sufficient teaching dosage to achieve positive results. This is done by teaching sex ed over 3 years in 7th, 8th, and 9th grades. It's available.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Available on the Storylabs internet-based learning platform for ease of teaching and minimal cost. The Storylabs platform also allows parent access to lesson summaries, which has been something parents have been saying. They haven't been able to look at the curriculum. So thank you very much for having us tonight, and we appreciate you listening to us, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Jo Rivera, she left? Okay, so we'll move forward. Sheridan Rosenberg, William Bruner, James Fenkner, and then Aaron Bonsky. Those are the last four.
Thank you. My name is Sheridan Rosenberg, and I I can't imagine you're going to adopt this curriculum this evening, and I just can't imagine that you're on board with this. It's half-baked, just on its face. When you look at the number of meetings that were held and only 25 people showed up, it's really a failure of communication that I do see as a pattern with the district. I really want to comment on the website. It's looking so much better than it ever has. It's so much easier to use. There are buttons that drive you directly to board meeting minutes, and so thank you. But what's really missing on the front page is just a simple agenda. So for example, I didn't write down when the next meeting is going to take place for the superintendent. I wasn't aware of these meetings for health ed. I probably could have had 100 people there, especially Hispanic families, that these are not their values. I promise you it would be torches and pitchforks in English and in Spanish. So it's pretty clear that what we need to do is revisit this. Open it up, bring more people from the public in. You cannot decide this based on 25 people. Some were parents, some weren't. That is a failure on behalf of the district to do an appropriate reach out. I am fully on board with understanding that there are so many families living in deep, deep poverty that don't have internet. They're not going to get Parent Square announcements. They're not going to have access to the website
30
necessarily,
seconds.
and they're working full time. So what I think what you should do is certainly table this. Don't adopt this tonight. That's just incredibly irresponsible. Let's do another reach out. Certainly survey all of the curriculum, including the hard curriculum. Rather than shoving this down our throats, because it's not going to go well if you do. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bill Brunner. It should be apparent from my age that I don't have any children in the district, but I'm just a grumpy old senior that's concerned about the curriculum that's being taught in our schools. I just have a series of questions for you tonight. And one of the questions that I would ask you is, are you called the National Board of Education? No, of course not. It's Santa Barbara. And do you reflect the opinions, the diversity, choice word here, do you reflect the diversity of opinions that we share, that many of us are concerned about in this community? I mean, there's a broad variety of thought involved here. I would ask you this, in your deliberations and your decision-making, do you take other accounts into your thinking even when they're not in focus or in tune with what you're necessarily thinking? There are families out here in the community that do not wish to abrogate their parental authority and responsibilities to a third party. These are life's sensitive issues, and there are many parents that wish to discuss that with their children at home. I'm going to offer you a challenge tonight. Would you be willing to send home, and I'm sort of
30 seconds.
piggybacking on what I just heard from the other speaker, would you be willing to take a page, a representative page from the text, send it home? Would you have the courage to do that along with a public opinion survey? Would you have the courage to do that? Or are you going to just turn a deaf ear to a grumbling old senior citizen here? Thank you.
Thank you.
You're not a grumbling old senior citizen. There's been people that have touched upon this and the issue of process that has been used to get where we are with this I have to say, terrible teen talk. It started with this subtle deception and a reliance on this group called Adolescent Sexual Health Work Group. Now, it's hyphenated in the next presentation as ASHWG. Now, ASHWG provided color-coded analysis of 5 very similar curricula, which leads readers towards a preordained conclusion, which is the selection of Teen Talk. Except there's something that they didn't tell you. There's something that the 10 teachers that picked this curricula probably didn't know. And there's something our administrators should have known or didn't seek it out so that it would remain hidden. The very publisher of Teen Talk, a group called Health Connected, is an affiliated partner of ASHWG. It's a marketing process that's going on right here. It's a foil to market Health Connected's Teen Talk. This group, this Adolescent Sexual Health Work Group, is not independent. It is not authoritative. And it is not required to follow it for adherence of AB 329.
30 seconds.
I don't have enough time to go into the other details here, but I do want to say there's another point of process which people have touched upon. Parents have not received very much interaction here, and I would strongly suggest that elementary school parents also get these notices, because in a few years they're going to be there at middle school. So thank you very much for your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Erin Bonsky. I am coming to you representing as a parent of a child in 6th grade in Goleta Union School District entering GV in Santa Barbara Unified. I would like to make 2 points. The first is that as a GUSD parent who will be affected by this curriculum implementation, I received no notification about any of the parent forums being conducted by SB Unified. I know also that none of my colleagues and friends within the GUSD system received parent square notification or any other type of notification of this curriculum. It seems to me that it should be imminent that if this type of curriculum is being adopted, or any type of curriculum is being adopted in which it involves intra-district upward matriculation, that there should be an ed code of how this curriculum should roll out and how the communication and information dissemination should happen. So my first question is, was the ed code of rollout as far as the information adhered to according to California Ed Code, and was Goleta Union School District notified so that they could also get on board with educating their parents involved in this process? My concern is that there has not been enough due diligence to notify the community at large. Let's face it, as much as we might like to treat this as just another curriculum upgrade, it's not, because the topic of health and sexual
30
education
seconds.
taps into our human sense of ethics and morality and bleeds into territory that is controversial in both the public and educational sector. Therefore, it deserves not to be rushed through, but rather to have a thoughtful, slow, and equitable approach that involves more communication with parents who the curriculum affect. My experience as an educator shows that best educational practice include getting to know your demographic, learning from them in order to form a lesson plan and in order to get information to them.
Very much.
So I hope that you can implement a curriculum that will have differentiated
Thank you.
educational options. You're welcome. Thank you.
So I'd like to thank everyone for coming this evening, and I know it's been a late evening, but we appreciate your comments, and so thank you for your time. That concludes our public comment. Madam President.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, Ms. Carey.
Thank you,
For
Ms.
item G2.
Yep, thank you, Ms. Capps, and board members and public. And I do want to just echo those sentiments of thanking people for their engagement. I think it's common ground that we all have, and that I can safely assert that this is a topic that deserves a lot of engagement, because it's a topic that's important and it's a topic that is sensitive, as I think we can all agree. So thank you for being so engaged, not just tonight, but in the weeks and months leading up to the board report tonight. I want to just sort of frame this with just a reminder for most, but maybe some helpful information for some who may not have it, although there is the content in the board report itself and embedded in links that are within the attachments associated with this item. And that is that as a public school, it's incumbent upon us to implement our frameworks, our curricular frameworks, and also to be compliant with any legislation. There's reference to Ed Code, and we have both in this case. We have recent legislation and recent framework renewals that we are responsible for ensuring alignment to in our schools. As far as how the instructional materials process works, the guidance from the California State Department of Education is, I think people would appreciate what the guidance is. It talks about thoughtful decision-making processes. It actually gives guidance that the primary weight or the majority consideration be given to certificated teachers of the subject matter that is the intended grade level or the intended class for which the instructional materials will be used. But it also recommends and gives guidance that there be parent, and that it asks or requests that there be a promotion of parent and community involvement. And so just noting that question from earlier, I will, by way of introducing Dr. Ann Roundy Harder, who many of you know before, because I know many of you have attended the forums, and I can hear certainly some of the questions about what the attendance was like, but I know she'll be able to speak to that in a more detailed way. I want to commend Dr. Ann Roundy Harder for doing a lot of networking with similarly situated districts and people who are her counterparts, and for presenting things with, I just think, the utmost professionalism around a topic that is very important and is very sensitive. So, Dr. Roundy Harder, if you'd come to the podium. I just, again, want to emphasize our intent, which is to both ensure compliance with the law for the students that we serve, while simultaneously upholding the highest standard of transparency for our board and for our community.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I know it's been a long day, but I appreciate that this is a really important topic, so I appreciate the time with you. So thank you to President Capps, board members, our superintendent, and staff. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the process for determining the curriculum that we came forward with this evening. So just to very briefly recap, in May of 2019, the California Health Framework came out. It was a revision, and AB 329, which has been referenced several times tonight, also known as the California Healthy Youth Act, CHIA, was embedded within the framework. So although CHIA had actually come out a couple of years prior to that, it really got highlighted through the framework coming out on the CDE website, so the California Department of Education website. So in highlighting that, there was a lot of buzz around the state, really, about AB 329 in particular and what was in the framework in terms of comprehensive sexual health education, even though comprehensive sexual health education is one of several aspects of health education that was addressed in the framework. But it was the one that was the most emotional and sensitive for a lot of people. And in fact, in my presentations that I gave, the first norm of the meeting was, these are sensitive topics, so let's be kind and understand that they can bring up a lot of emotion for people, which I think we've experienced here tonight. So in this fall, that was May 8th, 2019, that the new framework was released. And so at that point, I was talking to people from the Santa Barbara County Education Office through Curriculum Council. I was reaching out to other districts to say,
what are you doing? Because currently I know that we are not in compliance with all of these things for the California Healthy Youth Act or all of the aspects of the framework. So at that point, I did reach out to some other districts to find out what they were doing. A lot of them, like us, were scrambling to figure out how to meet all of those requirements. I also began meeting with junior high principals and assistant principals and asking them, you know, we do not currently have a junior high health class. And so where do you put health if you have no junior high health class? We talked about it on our education services team as well. And the fact that although we have an adopted textbook, the curriculum is not CHYA compliant, and therefore that caused a need for us to look for new curriculum that would be compliant with the law. I do want to say from the outset that it is important for our community to know that it is very, very clear in the law itself that parents have the right to opt their children out of any of the curriculums. So all of the things that we're talking about in terms of Teen Talk or any of the other CHYA aligned curriculum, parents can opt their children out in writing. So I just want to highlight that as well, that that is very clear in the law, and we would make that clear for parents. I'll talk more about that later. So also this fall, I started having weekly meetings with a health credentialed junior high school teacher to review curricula, to get some feedback about how we might go about training, to start brainstorming options. And then in December, had a meeting with the junior high PE teachers to review the ASHWG, previously mentioned ASHWG reviews, as well as look at the actual lessons in curriculum. In December, about a week later, I actually had another meeting with high school health teachers, and we talked about that and went through a similar process. So I want to point out that the process that we had with our parents and community members, which will be detailed in a few minutes, were the same process that our junior high PE teachers and our high school health teachers went through in terms of looking at the reviews, looking at the curriculum, and being able to give feedback. And then most recently in January, as many folks in the audience know that I'm now on a first name basis with from having met them at these presentations, I held 5 meetings that were open to parents and the community. And I wanted to respond to the concern from a Goleta Union parent that we did not reach out to Goleta Union specifically, and that is so, we did not. We sent a parent square message home to our current 7th and 8th grade families as the families most affected by that. So we sent a save the date in November, and then additionally about a few days before the actual presentations, like here they are now, so you can come to any one of them that you like. We held one here at the district office that was during the morning, and then we held 4 in the evenings, 1 at each of the junior high schools. So in those fall meetings with the junior high administrators, we talked about where do you place health if you do not have an actual health class. And you can't just change your whole master schedule and magically make a class in the middle of the year. So we talked about that and thought that looking at the standards, there was greater overlap with PE standards than with other subject areas as related to the California Healthy Youth Act curriculum. Additionally, more of our PE teachers have health credentials in addition to PE than in other subject areas. And in particular this year, when I talked to other districts, some put it in PE, some put it in science, and some don't have it at all. So we thought about science, but this year our junior high science teachers went through an extensive piloting process already. In fact, at an upcoming board meeting, we'll be talking about science curriculum. So we determined that PE was the most appropriate place. If you're wondering, why were we talking with PE teachers about this? Now, it surprised me a little bit, but one of the questions that I asked the PE teachers was, because the law says that you only need to teach the curriculum once in the middle grades, which for us is 7th and 8th or junior high, and once in high school, which is already covered through our health class that we have required for graduation, I thought they might say, well, let's just do 8th grade this year because we didn't get them last year. But in fact, their recommendation was that we teach the curriculum in both 7th and 8th grade this year. And then if we did that, because you only need to teach it once during the junior high years, that would mean nobody would need to teach it next year because we would have covered it the prior year for both grades. In that sense, then we could spend a year working on building towards an actual health class that would reside in the junior high schedule. Now, many years ago, we actually had a junior high health class. We haven't had one for about a decade or so, as I understand it. And that was coming from administrators and teachers, that we recognized that the ideal is to really expand health options to cover all the 6 areas that are covered within the framework, this being part of one of those. Then what we would do would build towards that class in 2021 and 2022, but as with all big changes, it requires stakeholder input, it requires thinking about many aspects beyond just lessons. In terms of this year, we do have health credentialed teachers that are available. Some of them are currently already teaching in the PE departments. We also have a health credentialed teacher who has taught our high school health class and is on release periods and has been working on the health curriculum this year, looking at the 5 different curricula, giving feedback, and so on. And so we have people available, if teachers themselves are not credentialed in health, to make sure they have a health credentialed teacher available for the lessons. We asked the teachers for their recommendations about the curriculum. So there were 2 separate meetings with the teachers, one for PE, for junior high, and one with high school health teachers. So even though the high school health teachers would not be implementing, of course, the junior high curriculum, because they have experience implementing CHYA aligned curriculum and with health in general, I felt it was worthwhile to get their perspective. So as I mentioned before, we did read through the reviews. We looked at the potential curricula, and then they made recommendations for teaching the lessons. Independently, in those 2 separate meetings, they chose Teen Talk Middle School as the #1 choice. Now, I will say, because our community has brought forward this HEART curriculum, I have not seen this. I received it like you did just this evening. So I'm certainly happy to look through this curriculum. But the 5 curricula that we chose were recommended through the framework, which recommends ASHWG, ASHWG, the Adolescent Sexual Health Work Group, as the body to make recommendations for curricula related to this. So that's what we went with, because that's what we had. In terms of Teen Talk as the #1 choice, it does include 12 bilingual lessons, so all lessons are available in English and in Spanish. It also has a companion curriculum, which is called Students for Students of All Abilities, which is basically for students in special education. It is fully CHY compliant from what we can see and have researched. So I know there were some concerns raised tonight that it was not. I believe that's potentially referring to the spirit of the law, or is based on interpretation. Rights, Respect, and Responsibility Middle School was the #2 choice of the teachers. It has 21 bilingual lessons. They are arranged by 7th grade and 8th grade, whereas Teen Talk does not delineate between 7th and 8th. Based on the information that we had, it was not fully CHYA compliant, and that was one of the factors the teachers considered. So when I surveyed the junior high PE teachers, we had 10 responses. We had 14 people in the room, but some chose not to reply, I guess. So of those who responded, of the 10, 80% chose Teen Talk, and 20% chose Rights, Respect, and Responsibility, and nobody chose the others. One of the options was, I have no preference at this time, but nobody made that option. Nobody chose that option. Somewhat similarly, when I asked the same question of the high school health teachers, we had 7 responses for this one. 71.4% of them chose Teen Talk. 14.3 said Positive Prevention Plus, and 14.3 said, I don't have a preference at this time. So you can see the majority in both cases chose Teen Talk as the number one. So just to clarify, there were 17 total teacher responses.
But I'm sorry, this is a chance for her to give us her, I'm sorry, excuse me. This is just a time for her to give her presentation. Thank you.
In the survey, teachers gave comments about Teen Talk, and these were comments. So one said teacher-friendly, one felt it was the most compliant with CHYA. Green refers to the way that the Ashweg reviews coded each of the elements of the curriculum. So green is fully compliant. Yellow meant there were minor modifications, and red meant major modifications were needed. There were no red areas for this, so when they're saying green, what they mean is it was compliant. Most ready to go, shorter length of lessons, short and to the point, good support materials, one like the layout, similar, more teacher-friendly, more green, and easiest to implement. So when it came to our parent and community input, again, the reminder about the right to opt out of all or part of the curriculum. And if we move forward as a district with adopting this or other curriculum, my intention is to send a letter to all families to let them know exactly what the lessons are so that they can be informed about the contents of the curriculum and, of course, have a right to review that curriculum. So we held 5 parent and community presentations in January. We had initially sent out a save the date in November, might have mentioned that earlier, and then we had the 5 opportunities. We did invite 7th and 8th grade Santa Barbara Unified parents, and then we did have many members of the public who also attended. We did have some people that attended multiple sessions. One person attended 4 out of the 5, some others attended 3 out of the 5. Of course, most people chose to just do 1. Between 8 to 25 people attended each session. I did not ask for sign-in sheets. I felt that was potentially intrusive for people, so I didn't sit there and, count names, but it was about 8 to 25 each time. Total 27 people gave feedback, written feedback on the surveys, or a couple people emailed it to me instead of handing me the written survey. And opinions varied widely, as you'll see. So I wanted to make sure that I fairly and accurately reflected the wide range of opinions that we had about the curricula. So from our Santa Barbara Unified, self-identified on the survey, because one of the questions was if they were a Santa Barbara Unified junior high parent, an elementary school parent, or high school parent, or a community member potentially from outside Santa Barbara Unified. So of those who identified themselves as Santa Barbara Unified junior high parents, 8 preferred the Teen Talk Middle School. These were some of the comments: great graphics, medically accurate, more concise, etc. 5 preferred rights, respect, and responsibility. A couple of people mentioned it seemed more age appropriate to them. And some parents also liked that those lessons can be seen online. So the Teen Talk it's copyrighted material. It's available in a binder. I did make that available to the board. So somebody has my binder. I don't actually have it right now. Okay, thank you. But so that it's hard to share that in a large format, and that was a challenge. So that's why I think some people chose to come to multiple evenings, and then additionally I had a few that met with me privately because they felt they needed more time to look. So I tried to accommodate that. So 8 Teen Talk, 5 rights, respect, responsibility, and then 2 had no preference, and 1 said, I don't like either of those top 2 choices. From the community members and public, it was a little bit different, and as you've heard tonight, some of those voices are represented both in this review, because they gave me surveys as well as talking tonight. 2 preferred Teen Talk Middle School. The quotes were, "I support the top choice of the teachers. It has no red-coded sections." And 1 noted, "I like that it has special education lessons." 0 preferred rights, respect, and responsibility. 0 had no preference, so you had strong opinions about this one either way. 9 did not like either. Sample comments, several people said they found it disturbing, too explicit, meaning for middle school, junior high age kids. And then 1 person referred to it as liberal progressiveness. So those were exemplars of the kinds of comments and concerns that we heard from community members and public based on the surveys that I received. So having shared all of that, I'm bringing forward a recommendation with that input from teachers, from administrators, from parents and our community members who attended our presentations, that we adopt the Teen Talk Middle School. And I know there may be further questions about that. So I welcome questions, and thank you for listening to the presentation.
Thank you so much. No, these are questions. I'm sorry. Thank you, but this is a time for the board to ask questions and to provide comments. Thank you so much. Any questions or comments? Ms. Ford.
Thanks so much for this information. It's a lot to sort of digest, just from the time we got our information to the time I saw this binder, but I do have a few thoughts. Do you know offhand how much, it says it has to be taught in, for example, 1 grade in middle school, 1 grade?
At least once in the middle grades.
Yes,
Yeah.
so I'm looking for a little bit more specificity as to whether the Act, Healthy Youth Act, actually says how many hours?
It does not.
Okay, and this looks like, yes, there are 12 units, but there are 2 or 3 activities within each of those 12 also.
There is some teacher flexibility in terms of that, and each, this curriculum comes with training that you can get from the publisher. So we would be getting that training. Per what they say about the materials, they say it will take about 2 weeks of a regular lesson, which in junior high is about 45 minutes, to be able to teach the lesson. So some lessons are more of an hour long and some are 30 minutes, but overall they say it's about 10 to 12 sessions. When we were talking with the teachers, we were basically saying it's going to probably be 12 lessons or 12 periods effectively.
Okay, and how many kids are in a typical junior high school PE class?
That varies, and that is one of the concerns about logistics that we've talked about with the PE teachers, and I've been very frank with the principals that that is not for me to solve, that I will certainly partner with them, but each site has its own unique needs based on the number of classes per period, the number of students assigned to the teachers. So each school is choosing to handle this slightly differently. We are planning to meet again with the teachers on March 10th, depending on what happens in terms of the curriculum adoption, to be able to work through some of those logistical aspects with them, and then also to have training. And our intention is, if we move forward with adoption by the end of this month, then we would move forward with trainings and information out to our families in March, and then we would not begin teaching the curriculum until 4th quarter after spring break.
I guess the other thing that I can understand your rationale, but it seems slightly possibly problematic, is to adopt a curriculum now, rush to the teaching of 7th and 8th grade this year, take a whole year off when, I mean, at least to my mind, there's a possibility of looking at looking more deeply at other materials. So
yeah, I'd like to address that specifically if I can, so thank you for that question. So the pickle that we're in right now, and that every district is in, is that we are non-compliant currently with the law, and that's what we're trying to do, is get into compliance with the law. So when I say the law, I'm referring to the California Healthy Youth Act, and of course, in a larger sense, with the California Health Education Framework. So we recognize that there's a short-term and a longer-term solution. What we're looking at right now is to be compliant with the law, with the understanding that the state, and it might seem odd to the public because I've been in education 26 years and I still think it's odd the way they do it, but they push out standards. Then several years later, they come out with a framework, and the framework is a guidance document. In this case, it's about 1,000 pages long, that tells you, some recommendations for how to implement the standards. Then the publishers scramble to make sure that they have material that will be fully compliant with all of the framework. Then they have what they call publishers' fairs, and that's, usually at a county education office where the publishers will say, oh, look at all of our curriculum. And the state will have then, in the meantime, listed on the CDE website the recommendations for K-8 curriculum. In this case, we're only talking about 7-8. Now, I have heard from the county education office that most likely we will not even get to that until fall of next year, and it might be 2021. So as a district, we need to decide, are we willing to remain non-compliant? Are we going to look at other curricula? Like I said, this is new. I haven't had any chance, nor has anyone, to review it beyond the community that shared it. And we can certainly do so. But how long are we willing to stay non-compliant is one of the concerns and questions that I have for us while we wait for the state. So these five curricula that were reviewed by our teachers were the ones that were called out in the framework as being recommended at this time. They are not the official list because that does not exist yet by the state.
Ms. Sims-Wotton.
I just have a clarifying question.
Sure.
So if the state hasn't pushed it out, how can we be non-compliant?
The state,
I'm just trying to understand.
so we are non-compliant with California Healthy Youth Act. What the state has not put out yet is the list of the K-8 materials that you must choose from. So it's saying in the meantime, these are the 5 that we're recommending that are California Healthy Youth Act compliant. This was not one on the list. It may be compliant. I don't know because I haven't looked at it. But we were going from what was listed in the framework, which just came out in May. So it is a weird conundrum that the state puts us in, because it would be handy if they would just give us the list of the K-8 recommendations at the same time as the framework, but that is not the process that they follow.
And just to follow up on it, so to Ms. Ford's point about, can we wait a little bit before we, go into it? I know we're trying to be compliant, and I understand, and I would also ask, what's the penalties for being non-compliant, number one. But just want to kind of understand it so that we have the full effect of it. I mean, we've been out of compliant, not that I'm encouraging that we stay out of that, but I just think that this is such a sensitive and emotional topic that can we wait a little longer? But I'm deferring to you because you're looking at all those things when I ask that question.
Well, first I want to point out that I am not an attorney, and I did not study law. So what I can say is that many other districts, as I said, are scrambling to become compliant, which was highlighted in the framework that came out in May. And so I've talked to CARP, I've talked to Lompoc, I've talked to Santa Maria, I've talked to Ventura, I've talked to a bunch of people sort of in our in the 2 counties, our county and just to the south of us. And some people have moved forward as districts with adoption, and some are still in process and looking. And so we had a Zoom conversation with several districts, emails, et cetera. So I also want to put out there that our high school health teachers feel very strongly that there is a gap in the fact that we are not compliant in this area in junior high health, and they would like to see, they'd like to see a full health class for students in junior high. And we have junior high teachers that recognize the need as well, because whether we like it or not, there are kids who are experimenting with some of these things. There are kids that are questioning. There are kids that are making some poor choices and unhealthy choices. And the goal of the ACT is to try to help students make healthier choices in their lives. Also, in the framework, many times over, as well as in the very first lesson in Teen Talk, it does talk with your parents about what your family values are, etc. That parents are so crucial in this process. It is not just up to the schools. Now, we obviously have curriculum, but conversations must happen openly, honestly, at home, and should.
Well, I appreciate your answer to that question, and my son will probably kill me, but he's 25, so whatever. So, but how crucial and how sensitive this is, and how important it is that you're talking to your parents, because if they're not talking to their parents, they're talking to somebody else or to each other who are uninformed.
Or the internet.
And so, well, even more so now, in terms of that. So so my questions are just in terms of trying to, how do we have balance between this, make sure that we're meeting the needs of the things that are happening with our students so that they're being safe and, with regards to what they're doing and what they're seeing. And so I can appreciate that, but I also want to be mindful and know that you have been, this is a very good presentation of the process, and make sure that we've covered the details. And if it still comes down to the point that we really need to adopt it, to make sure that we are addressing the gaps that are certainly seeing it from the teachers, because they're on the ground seeing it, every day. But I can appreciate the challenge that we're in. So I appreciate your answer on that. But just in terms of where do we find the balance of being compliant at the same time, and also hearing, from the community as well.
Right.
So thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Reed.
Thank you for your presentation. And it is an important and sensitive topic, and I want to also thank again the public comment from the community here. And I guess I'm concerned, just we didn't have that many people show up, and we were limited to 1 month. So in terms, and though you invited them in November, it still was limited in nature of really being able to attend. Or perhaps there might be a hybrid model that could be considered, where it could be online and for people that couldn't attend. But I'm just talking about the process itself. I know that you went into a lot of work to do that, but I still feel it was limited in the response. That's one thing.
May I just say one thing? I did hear a concern about it not being online. The Rights, Respect, and Responsibility is free online. That was one thing that the parents who said they liked about it. I feel that it would be violating copyright to take a copyrighted binder of materials and put it online, but I'm happy to try to make it available as much as possible to people, but we also need to make sure we're following copyright law.
I think I guess my point is more, for example, in my work in teaching, we have hybrid models of info sessions, for example, wherein people are invited to review or hear about information at the same time, so that there is time for for people to provide feedback or ask questions. So I'm not suggesting necessarily that you launch it onto a website without any explanation, because I think you can have conflict there. But in terms of how we go about that, I guess that would be something I would want to put forward, of really looking at that.
So just on the evenings and the daytime session that we had, my formal presentation was about 25 to 30 minutes, and then we had an hour, or at the daytime session, actually, we extended by half an hour for people to look at the actual lessons. So I just want to clarify what the process was, and I'm certainly open to, other ideas there.
Well, I'm just kind of raising questions and sort of generating some comments. What's really vital, and I think we talk about this with the ethnic studies curricula, is you don't always find everything in a perfect little box in one particular notebook that's going to express everything that a curricula should be. So I guess in my experience in teaching, oftentimes you pull from different sources to compile something that is comprehensive in nature, but perhaps it's not just in one particular folder, for example. And in this case, there was only 5 options that you really chose from and you picked, but there might be a way of creatively putting together sources that may be more appropriate or not. I don't know, because I would need to delve into that. But I'm just thinking there might be ways that we can be creative about thinking about how to pull this curricula together. I just feel like we can't just purchase a box and say this is the one we're going to do without really looking at all the aspects in terms of that. Certainly with teaching, I think it's really, what's really important with teaching is that the teachers are really prepared, because this is going to be new for them to do. So really, the sensitivity of how they teach it, I think the reference in terms of how many are in the room, I mean, if you have a class of 40 students or 50 students, is that how you're going to disseminate the information, or is it going to be in small groups? I mean, it's one thing to hear this information in a large auditorium, or how it, I don't know. I don't know what the...
It would be a regular classroom situation.
But I just think about how it's disseminated, how it's taught, how students can feel safe and respected in how they talk about it. I mean, there's a lot of different considerations, I think, to have. And I want to speak to Ms. Sims-Moten's comments about compliance of law. Like, if we are in the process of analyzing the curricula and the process of formulating how we might teach it, and thinking about how we can develop a curricula that is comprehensive from perhaps more than one model, then could we possibly be in compliance to a degree, because we are in the process of doing this research to ensure that we are getting the most comprehensive practice that's going to be implemented in the best possible way for our students. So I guess I throw that out to say, I don't feel we want to rush into something just because we need to be compliant when we don't have all the information, which is how we're dealing with the ethnic studies curricula, which we're getting pushback there too, and that there isn't one textbook or one piece of material. You know what I'm saying?
I do. Several things I think to respond to try to help clarify. I do see this as different than the ethnic studies curriculum discussion, because it is not currently law that ethnic studies be taught. It is internally a decision that as a district we have made to make that as a graduation requirement, but this is state law, so I do see that as slightly different. In terms of exactly what happens, as I said, I would defer to legal advice about exactly what happens. I don't know the answer to that. But we can look at two aspects that we do need to balance. And one is we do want to be thoughtful. We want to ensure that curricula is medically vetted. The law states it needs to be medically accurate. It needs to be inclusive. It needs to be age appropriate. And so we just want to make sure that if we start to go down the route of, a little of this and a little of that and piecemeal, that we would make sure that we were fully compliant with all the aspects. And my concern, and actually the teachers talked about this as well, the concern might be that we're not necessarily researchers and we're not necessarily medical experts to be vetting all of the material. We could certainly look at the guidelines, we can look at the law and the requirements and do our best with that. But I can say that the teachers felt more comfortable with a set curriculum that has teachers' guides, that has recommendations, that has been reviewed by people beyond the classroom, including medical experts. So I did talk with one other district that had kind of done a hybrid approach. I had a very extensive phone conversation, about 40 minutes, with a person who had done that along with a retired health teacher. But she, at that time, expressed some regret that it wasn't easier to she felt it was easier to go with something that was set, because there was pushback like, well, how'd you make that choice and why that, and so on. So there are pluses and minuses with every decision, I think. And we just have to weigh that, and we have to weigh what our children are getting or not getting, and we have to weigh the laws, and we have to weigh the pluses and minuses of decisions that we make on behalf of precious children, and behalf of our community's desires as well.
Has there been any effort, just curious, because this is a state like law, right? Of generating actually like educators coming together or health coming together to locally, even with amongst all these districts? I know you had individual conversations, but actually coming together and talking about which one everybody, you know, like why one agrees with another, just having a conversation.
That has already happened. Actually,
Okay.
it's happened in a couple of different venues. So one was through Curriculum Council, which takes place in Buellton, and it pulls from districts all throughout Santa Barbara County. And so that was one venue. Another was one that I just generated myself because I was curious about what others were doing. And so I just started my own internal chart, like, hey, what's CARP doing? Hey, what's Lompoc doing? Santa Maria, et cetera. And then we did have that Zoom call that several districts participated in, and that was organized through the Santa Barbara County Education Office.
Great. Ms. Ford.
I just wanted to add a couple things now that I've thought through this, and I do really appreciate all the work that you've done. But I just want to go on record to say I'm concerned about the small number of responses and input, and I am concerned about PE teachers and PE classes being the place where this takes place.
Okay.
And I taught it in 6th grade and 8th grade. It was called Family Life at the time. I taught it as a teacher and as a principal. And I love teaching it because the kids really want to know. They want to know about their bodies. They want to know about themselves. And they want to know what it's like to become adults. But a lot of adults don't feel comfortable teaching this stuff. And it's sort of to me, it's something that you just have to find the right mix of teacher time during the school day, time during the school year, and age group.
I totally agree. It has to be a right fit, and that's why we are making sure that health credentialed teachers are available for whatever we end up choosing, because they have experience, they have the training in this.
Dr. Reed, sure.
Has there been a thought of co-facilitating, like for example, a high school educator with a junior high health teacher? I mean, so that you have the expertise of someone who is, you know, and where it's going.
Honestly, our high school health teachers are awesome. They have very generously said, we are open for any questions, we're open for support. Our district health PLC lead said, give them all my phone number, give them my email. You know, I want to be very available to them. They've offered to partner with them. I mean, it would be awkward to take them out of their own classes to then co-teach with someone else, but certainly in terms of training and support, absolutely, they have already generously offered that, and I have shared that information forward.
Okay, Ms. Munoz, do you have a question or no? You don't have, it's okay if you don't.
I think, you know, I agree with, in terms of like the communication, the topic, you know, the teaching of it. And I appreciate all the work that you've done and analyzed, you know, which curriculum is chosen as preferred by the teachers and most compliant. I agree that our young people do want to be able to, you know, communicate, and also the stress on, you know, what the family chooses in terms of what their preference is, and and the fact that, you know, parents can opt out of the 2 weeks or a portion of it if they do that in writing, and that's where I think, you know, you have obviously with the forums communicated that with the parents, and I'm sure would continue to do so. The one the one thing that you brought up also was, you know, parents that have children that are going to go into 7th grade, you know, and communicating that with them in terms of the class. And I think, you know, I respect the choice of the curriculum that, you know, that you've made, that the discussion of that with other school districts, with other teachers, and support of the health ed teachers that are teaching that in high school.
Okay. So I see some hands raised. I just need to explain that this portion of our meeting, it's not for that. But I know, Dr. Roundy, this is ending with a compliment to you and your thoroughness. You've been so accessible. So I hope that you can take those questions and as you have all along through this process. So I just wanted to explain. That's why I'm not calling on anyone. But thanks to the board. I know this is, just to be clear, this was just a discussion. There's no action to be taken. So this will come back to us, it sounds like.
Yes, and I'm happy for people to email me, and several have. I've been getting emails since May.
Sure.
And of course, most recently, some from people who had attended the presentations or had not been able to. And so my email is on our district website, and I can also spell it out if that's helpful.
Well, thanks for yielding all these questions.
Yeah.
And again, thanks to our the members of the community who care so much and we're here, and to the board. I think we're going to move on now in the interest of time, 10 o'clock. But thank you so much.
Yeah,
and we'll
thank
move
you.
on to item G1, which is the approval of school safety plans. Dr. Wagnick and Mr. Moore. Okay, if you could take Dr. Wagnick. Oh, wait, do we have, no, we don't have any couple, no one's, we're good. No, good to go.
Good evening, board. Really important topic. I'm sorry people are leaving. Thursday, Friday marks the 2-year anniversary of Parkland, and I was reflecting on the conversations that we had that year around the comprehensive school safety plan. Very, very proud to quickly turn this over to Kelly Moore so that he can present to you the continued improvement that we've done to make sure that our students and staff are safe. One thing that Kelly often says, and it's true, is the community expects us to get this right 100% of the time. And that is an unobtainable goal, but it's always the goal that we're shooting for. And I will tell you that in the 2 years since we were having those conversations here in this room, we have made huge, huge strides towards ensuring that our students are safer, both physically and socially, emotionally, and mentally. So with that, I will turn it over to Kelly Moore for the presentation.
Good evening. Still evening, right? This is a long one for me. I woke up at 2:30 this morning, thanks to my dogs. What we're going to go over is a reminder of what we went over last year, really, and where we've come since then, and a couple of the next steps and some of the modifications that were made. Last year, we started off with this slide, essentially, and this really demonstrates what safety is to our school. It's not just emergency plans, it's not just this, it's all of these combined. And in this last year and a half process that I've gone through, I've really gotten to understand this so much better, and the relationship that we have and with everything that we're doing in school, the social, emotional well-being, community partners, our physical security, and so forth. But it really takes all of these and the relationships to them to have a safe school environment and to really address school safety. Again, this was the process that we went through. Initially, we looked at what we had, what we wanted to do, what we're going to do, and so forth. Through that assessment, we developed our comprehensive plan last year. You'll remember that that plan was essentially 300 pages for each school. That was a big lift for them. But there was a purpose for that, and really was to force them to go through that process. That process really educates them and indoctrinates them in emergency and school safety processes. And I think we've made huge strides in changing that culture of, we're going to do a fire drill this month, and we'll do another one next year. But really looking and embracing the culture of developing a school safety culture. So we had those plans. Everyone had the same plan essentially, with a small portion of it that was site-specific. This year, what we did, after last year, we did all of this stuff and we reassessed like we said we were going to, and we kind of changed the format a little bit. So we have one 200-page plan that is the district umbrella, the mothership of the plans, and attached to the back of it is the individual site plans that really breaks it down into the nuts and bolts of what each of the school sites need to manage an emergency through there. So that was the process that we went through this year. It was much easier for the school sites. One, because they had the experience of the heavy lift last year, and they understood what we were looking for. And then once we went through that process, it really took them just a few, in some cases, a few minutes to take care of it. A reminder of what the Comprehensive School Safety Plan is. It's consolidated emergency and safety plan. The safety portion of it is school climate, policies, behavior, discipline, those types of things. And then how do we respond in an emergency? And so we aligned all of that. And this year, we aligned the emergency operation plans with the new Crisis Go emergency communications platform. Each school completed their own emergency operation plan that had site-specific details to it. So they had the maps, they contact people, the teams that they've designated, and so forth. Last year, as you know, in October, we had the pleasure of launching the first use of the Crisis Go app for emergency communications. And so this year was really about aligning all of those checklists and everything with that platform. The compilation of the documents is really what makes up the Comprehensive School Safety Plan. The cover packet, which is the bulk of it, the school safety plan, which I mentioned is the policies and so forth, emergency operation plans and so forth. The school site safety is really moving forward. There will be some review of the district plan, but that's really kind of going to stay the same. We're kind of close to having a final product there. There will be some review in the future, as there should be, but really the next lifts are going to be fairly light for most of the schools. The appendices are really the checklist, how to do things, what your expectations are, and their use for the drills, what we do monthly, and their functional checklists. And again, we aligned all of these. So last year, I think we had 7 or 8 checklists. We have 28 this year because we had to align them with Crisis Go and kind of the functionality of that platform. So what's next for us? We're going to continue to refine the district and school operations plan. We are still using and getting familiar with the Crisis Go platform, and that's going to be a process. It's, I think most of us in here have received alerts, but there's ways to work through that process that we haven't made that switch, right? We're going through the motions, but we haven't made the connection of, okay, I need to use it now, right? We're getting there, and we're having some issues with going from how we currently do something to how it needs to be done in the app, right? And specifically taking attendance. There's a difference when we're taking attendance for Aries and how we take roll and account for kids in an emergency situation. They're having some cross-pollination issues there, or contamination, depending on your perspective, I guess. And then we've trying to work through that, so that's going to be really good. Because Crisis Go has the capability of reunification, tracking, and accountability in there, we wanted to get that rolled out and get people familiar with that before we started the standard reunification method, because it aligns directly with the I Love You Guys Foundation that we adopted last year. This is going to be a big lift for the future because it's a very complicated process, accounting for kids that have scattered to the winds during an emergency. The app will allow us and hopefully assist us with that, and that's going to be the next step. So once we get pretty well-versed in the functionality of the app, then we'll work into this reunification, because reunification is going to be a messy thing because it's not going to happen at the school where the event is happening. And that's a process that people have to really wrap their heads around. We need to, going back to the first slide, we had all these relationships. One of the things that concern us all is how the emotional, mental well-being of our students affect the safety of our campus, right? So the big things that are working nationally are threat assessments and how we do threat assessments. And one of the pieces that I recognized fairly early was a lack of understanding of how we conduct threat assessments at a school level. So we're working on that. We're rolling out training as we speak right now. I think I did my third one today. And we're working with law enforcement, and we're working with the schools to really start identifying that. It doesn't go far enough just to identify the threat. We have to identify the failure of the assessment. We have to look at how do we go and transition from a threat to an event. And we have to look how we integrate the threat assessment and how it relates to our emergency operations. And that's going to be something that we're going to have to look at in the next couple of months, because this is beginning to become an issue not just for us, but nationally, in the expectation. Like Dr. Wagner referred or alluded to earlier, I say, there's the stakes are high, the expectations are even higher, right? And they expect us and demand that we get it right every time. And we're dealing with humans. We're not going to get it right every time. But that's the expectation. So the expectation of the public is that we will identify it and correct it.
I have a question, because I've watched you do your sense making of us, so to speak, of education, and you're saying something important, but I'm not quite getting underneath it. So threat assessments. So we have a situation, and assessment is done sometimes by our staff, sometimes in conjunction with law enforcement. So what is it that culturally, procedurally, you're starting to see that needs to improve?
So what we're seeing is an improvement, right? So what we're seeing is a recognition that threat assessments can no longer be an assessment of, oh, that's just kid behavior. Those are stupid kids being stupid, right? Or young kids being young, or however you want to categorize that. So now we have to look at every threat assessment or every threat that we received in the terms of doing an assessment and assign the appropriate level to it, assign intervention theories or strategies, I should say, and really look at it from a behavioral intervention model with the hopes and goals of identifying concerning behaviors, threatening behaviors, suicidal behaviors, and potentially looking at intervening with behaviors that can be, through therapy and interventions, can be corrected. What we're seeing is the understanding that this is not just identifying those people we're going to lock up somewhere as a result of a threat, but identifying where they fall into doing IEP assessments, child find, and things like that. So we're getting the idea that, I'll use this as an example. We did a threat assessment on a first grader threatening to kill a fourth grader this year, right? Nothing's going to happen between a first grader and a fourth grader. But we started to look at, okay, this is an opportunity for us to intervene, learning moment, teaching moment, where the kids can say, all right, maybe this wasn't the appropriate response, so that we now have intervened at the earliest possible time to prevent something that is occurring 20 years from now. All right? So we're seeing that shift.
Dr. Wagenknecht, I see another dimension to MTSS emerging here.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it is. I mean, it's about, we often think of threat assessments and we think high school, maybe junior high, but really it's about looking at students along the continuum. And that way, if things are popping up when students are young, we're noting that. But we're also, in this case, it was a case of bullying, a response to bullying. Bullies create shooters. They create kids who act out violently. And so it's about identifying things as early as possible and being able to act on it. So it absolutely has an MTSS huge dimension to that.
And where the next step, the next level for the school district is really creating and integrating the school safety process into the normal business function of the school. The business, every business has a cycle, a pulse, and so forth. But we have to get that in there. We have to make sure that everyone, when we have, I know teaching time is precious. I know school staff time is precious. But it doesn't matter when we have an event, right? And I was explaining this to a colleague today. I used to run marathons. Don't laugh. Right? I don't look like a runner. I'm not. I completed marathons, let's say that. And I've also trained people in doing marathons. And I had a friend of mine ask me who wanted to run a marathon. He was following my training program, and he said, really, how important are the long runs? Long runs were too long for him, right? He's going to run 26 miles, but he didn't have enough time to run 5 miles on the weekend, right? So I said, it really is a matter of how much do you want to suffer? Do you want to suffer now, a little bit at a time, or do you want to suffer at the end of the marathon? Because there are people who literally wake up on Saturday and say, I'm going to run a marathon tomorrow, and they do that, right? But the point of it is the race itself is the determining factor. It doesn't care what you did or didn't do in the previous 6 months to prepare for that. And we take that analogy and we translate that to the schools. An event doesn't care that we didn't have time to run that drill. The event doesn't care that it was inconvenient because it was at recess or it was at lunch or whatever. It doesn't care. So we have to really start looking at changing that mindset and working through this with that kind of mindset. And that's when we're going to get to the level that we need to be at. That must be
There
time
we
for
go.
questions.
Thank you,
Comments.
Mr. Moore and Dr. Wagnick. Questions, comments from the board? This is such an important topic. I regret that it's 10:20 because it couldn't be more important. Yeah, Ms. Munoz.
So I'd like to say, I really appreciate both of you, having been a child welfare worker, both in Lompoc and Santa Barbara, and how quickly something can escalate with a child. We had a 5-year-old child who was a threat to others, to other children and such. I, certainly see the importance of this and a response that's uniform throughout our schools to keep our children safe.
Appreciate
So, thank you.
Ms. Simpson.
Thank you. So with that being said, so the sites that have preschools on them, how are we incorporating this in the overall?
The plans themselves,
Mhm.
so they're all part of that. So we're in constant contact with the early education, Daisy and Kathy Serrano for after-school programs.
Mhm.
And it really is part of the requirement of the site administrator who is responsible for the entire campus. So as an example, we have 2 located charter schools. So if there's an emergency or something happening on the campus, the primary administrator, so Goleta Valley, is the person who is responsible to make sure that the charter school is taken care of. Charter schools also have their own safety plans. Right.
And one more question. I'm not sure. I think I sent you a quick email, Fran, with regards to MTSS, what that means, multi-tier something, safety.
Multi-tiered system of support.
Okay, so, as we're looking at more social emotional ACEs in your younger kids, which has really been dismissed as they'll grow out of that, but there really are some serious indicators sometimes that we overlook, and so I'm just wondering, as our younger kids, are they a part of that MTSS support as well?
They should be from the very beginning, and actually, the ACEs work in our district is most robust in the preschools through the work with Palm. But the exciting thing that's happening is the pediatricians in town are on the cusp of screening for ACEs at birth.
Right.
And so we'll be working to then get those scores when students come into school.
Okay, and I would just, again, offer First Five as a resource as well.
Thank
That
you.
is something that we're working on too.
Great.
So.
Other questions, comments? Yeah, Ms. Ford.
Thanks for the presentation. I really love the analogy of the marathon. I think that's so true that in the end, it is what it is, and all the preparation in the world sometimes doesn't get you there. But having said that, I just wanted to put in a plug for I read through about 4 of them, so that's to say that I didn't read all of them. But the state strongly recommends that every school safety plan also includes a section on addressing bullying. And I didn't see it in the ones that I looked at. And I would love for this, in this next year, for that also to be part of the school safety plan.
So it is in there. It's part of it. It's linked through
It's linked through a board policy.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, I think it's really something that schools need to develop and have an actual school procedure rather than just a policy.
Sure.
That would be my wish.
So that you're in the realm that's outside of Kellyisms.
I know.
I don't know about emotional. I'm not an emotional support kind of guy.
But I am in the Fran realm.
Yeah. So, but I will tell you that we tie that very subject into everything that we're doing related to threat assessments and identification, because we all know that the number one grievance in active shooters is being bullied, right? And so we also know that if they were being bullied, their target was likely the bully, right? and bullies learn bullying from other bullies. So we have to figure a way to break that cycle. And so it's no longer acceptable to say, okay, you were bullied, now you're a threat. We have to start going backwards and reverse engineering and trying to figure out how do we stop all of that from dividing.
And rightfully so, parents really want to, well, I got asked that question so many times. What are you doing about the bullies? What are you doing about bullying?
Right.
And every school has to have an answer.
So,
And I would quickly say that the answer is social emotional learning that's integrated into the academic curriculum. Then you don't need a one-off bullying curriculum or approach because it's all included in there, right? Because social emotion, being socially, emotionally enlightened means that you have good relationships with other people. So, yes, all that to say, yes, social emotional learning.
Great, Dr. Reed.
So just to piggyback on what I brought forward from the National School Board Association, which is really this piece of tying SEL to our curriculum and the integration of mental health with safety, which is what we're talking about here too. So I just think what we're doing is really, and what you've brought forward, and I'm so sorry that you're leaving, but you've made such inroads in our safety. And your analogies are fabulous because having run one marathon and barely making it through, it didn't matter what I did. I made it before I died and keeled over, just like you feel. Right. But I do think the process and really understanding it and going back to where is this stemming from is crucial. And you're looking at that, and you're taking it to a deeper dive, which I just want to acknowledge. And we can't solve this overnight, but having these processes and really looking and rethinking and analyzing it, and integrating between systems is really, I think, making a difference.
I came to you last year breaking down silos, and that's part of what this is understanding relationships, not just personal relationships, but how processes and support services and things work together to solve our bigger problem, our community problem, right? Really what we're just trying to do is make people aware of, look, it's not just a threat assessment. We're trying to solve a problem, and we need to do it this way. The cops aren't going to do it, right? By the time it gets there, it's gone beyond that potential.
So thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, this is such an advancement from a couple years ago, and just your work and Dr. Wagnick's and the conversation is so robust now, as opposed to just linking, and I just appreciate the coordination. But I did have a couple questions. Just by chance heard a story today on the radio of that the two major teachers unions are now recommending, as well as Everytown, I'm glad that our moms are still here, are that we don't do active shooter scenarios. I'm not asking you to respond because that literally came out today sometime, but I found that really interesting. I do find, they're pushing and they're advocating. The short story that I read on NPR after I heard about it on the radio, I went and found it, but was that it doesn't necessarily show the results, and it has caused so much terror and anxiety, and to more of a focus on social emotional learning and the other things. So I just wanted to put that forward. You can respond. I had one other question, but yeah, go.
I'd love to respond.
Great.
That's what I do. Respond.
First response, in
I've
fact.
been responding for 34 years plus. I respectfully disagree with most of that. We go back to the adage, hope for the best, plan for the worst, right? I think that we don't necessarily have to always worry about active shooters. There's things that we can do that trigger the same reactive actions that we need to do. The problem is, in all reality, the probability of having an active shooter at one of our campuses is very, very small. The problem is we just don't know, right? And we have to give people the tool to protect themselves. And there's no other way to do it. There's no other, we can't just say, oh, let's hope it doesn't happen. And I've found in the people that I've talked to and the people that really have a good discussion, a robust discussion about this, once we start talking about options and how to respond and how to protect themselves and so forth, they really get empowered by it. And it really helps them decrease their stress because they have this confidence. Okay, I know what to do to survive. The stress is caused by the unknown and the fear of the unknown of what's going to happen to me. And if I can tell you what you need to look for, and I can tell you how to respond, even if the shooter is right there, and what you need to do, then they have solutions and they have this ability to say, okay, and I can tell you, I need you to start doing something. Just hiding or just freezing is going to get you killed. But if I can tell you and teach you how to get into a decisive movement and get away from where it is and take actions, you have a much better chance of survival. And the university, or Texas State University, has done a lot of research in this area. And it really, when you start taking care of your own safety and your own survival, your survival rate goes way up. And so from that perspective, I'm an advocate, and as long as people will let me, I will continue to go that
Well, I appreciate your response, and there is a white paper associated with this. I didn't yet find it, but we can read about it. And just one thing to that point about the anxiety with the active shooter drill, I actually just want to make sure to the people who are here, you can, I wanted to see what one was like, and I went, I contacted the school and went and participated in one. And so I just do think that parents, who might be curious about these drills should know that that's very much a possibility, and it helps, in communicating with your children. But related to this, and I'm glad that Moms Demand Action is here because I'm such a supporter of that group. Their big push, or one of many, is the safe gun storage, and 4.6 million guns are improperly stored. And
Okay.
You mentioned, I appreciate the spirit of the fourth grader and the first grader.
Right.
There's no threat there, but actually, if a fourth
Right.
grader or first grader or a kindergartner or a preschooler, thinks it's a play gun because it's not properly stored, that there can be tragedy. So I can just say this as a mom who I know, because I've read the materials, I'm supposed to ask when I'm doing play dates, do you have, how are your guns stored? It's a really hard thing to do. And so I'm wondering if we are actually, this is probably more of a question to Dr. Wagnick, but are we, again, on top of all the things we're communicating, are we participating in this program? Can we be participating in this program just to get the information out about safe storage?
I think that's definitely something we can talk about. I didn't meet with these parents, but I did meet with several other parents late last year, and it's something we can look into, and we educate the public in a number of areas, and so
thank you.
Examine
I
it.
could just say from my perspective, as someone who is educated about this, it would just normalize the questions that you need to do as parents to ask that very delicate question and educate, because again, so much of the statistics are so alarming that these shootings on campus are often from juveniles, kids, or young adults who got a gun that wasn't properly stored. So it's such a smart way to take away this, all the threats that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So I really am supportive of it. I'm supportive, I want to go on record, supportive of a resolution that was mentioned by our speakers, and so I'd like to look into that and bring that up at a further date. But I think that would be a smart thing for us to do. But I want to thank you for your service and this conversation.
Absolutely.
It's been a good one. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Thanks for those who've stuck it out here. We're going to move on down. Thank you, Mr. Moore, Dr. Wagnick. To item I, coming events. Any coming events we should know about?
Yes,
Okay.
I forgot to mention that there's a lot of Black History events that are going on
Sure.
in the community, and I will make this available. I'll send it out to the board members, one starting tomorrow, so all the way through the end of the month. So really good stuff we might want to get out and see.
Great. Okay, future agenda items. I just sort of referenced one with that resolution as a potential on gun safety, but any others? And I did share a document for us to contribute to, so we can do it either way. Okay? And I'll be sending an email about the special board meeting that our search firm has requested. You should get that tomorrow, so we'll get that set. But our next meeting is February 25th, like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.
And that special board meeting has the study session beginning at 4:30.
That's true, 4:30, starting early. Okay, with that, we move to the last item, which is adjournment. Thank you.